Hey everybody, Awesome Jimmy here. First of all, if you look at that release date of the video, do not be fooled, you are getting a full video this time around. I'm not going to try to pull a rug underneath you and reveal that I'm just making another video talking a bunch of stupid movies. So for this particular video, I figured I'd go ahead and do something a bit more experimental. First of all, to give you guys a bit of something interesting while I'm working on my next video, and two, because I really need a break from God of War Valhalla. So out of randomly, I decided to make a tier list on Bionicle. So Bionicle, if you're not aware, was a toy series from Lego that came out in the middle of 2001 all the way to 2009, and then also got a reboot. Now, I grew up with most of these sets. I had a huge collection of them, and then they canceled it because they knew that this was the best Lego series ever because they're fucking cowards. And I found a tier list, and I want to rank them all. So as you can see right here, this has pretty much every single set out there. Now, granted, there's like a couple collections and fusion sets that are not featured on here. And no, I'm not going to bother counting all those. And for this particular tier list, I want you guys to know before we start, this particular tier list had them all in alphabetical order from their names. So I had to scrounge through, look through them, and put them all in release order. And yes, that procedure was just as annoying as you're probably thinking it is. So let's go ahead and listen to my non-scripted ramblings. So first of all, we got the tier list. Ignore that. First of all, we have
He's at the door just now.
goats. Like, obviously, these are the best Bionicles that you can get your hands on. We have Awesome. These are sets that might not be quite GOAT status, but they're all very good. B for Solid. I can't really think of a good pun. C tier, only owned for the collection. If I had to own them, then I don't think I complain too much, but they're not one of my favorites. And for as rare as Bionicle has ever fucked up, like, they have made some failures, and this is exactly where they would go. But I'm also going to add a couple extra tiers. Believe it or not, I have not owned every single set in the series, so if I never own them, then they're going to go here. And then finally, what the WTF is this shit? Which these go for sets that I have literally never seen before. And the designs are just so confusing as to, like, why you would ever want this thing. And so let's go ahead and get on to that. As a prime example, we have this spider-looking thing. I assume that's just like a random spider Rahi that they were in the series, but like looking at this thing, it's just a little too simplistic, and even then it goes into what the fuck is this shit? Like, who the hell was like asking for this thing? And so first of all, like, we have like a collection of 7 of these small Matoran, and you could definitely tell that this was the experimental phase of the Bionicle series, as all of these are just like very simplistic. And they have an interesting function, I guess. Like, you can just like fling their arms back and they throw discs. But I have never really owned these, and gonna go ahead and spoil it a little bit right now. These are sets. I have never been a big fan of the Matoran sets. I've never really liked the tiny designs because their functions are very simplistic and all that simplistic, and I never really cared too much about them. So these are in never owned. And then we got, well, whatever the hell this thing is supposed to be. That goes right there. No need for explanation. And so we got the Bohrok Va. So the Bohrok are like the antagonistic force of like the very first, as they're like these bug creatures, and these are Matoran sort of things. Matoran size Bohrok variants. They have these. They have the respective Bohrok weapon and a unique weapon. Like, for instance, this one's got the hook. This one's got katanas. This one's got claws. Now, so I've only owned one of these. So that is going to be this one. I'm gonna go into will only own for the collection. You can't really do a lot with the Matoran. Like you can like pose their arms just a tiny bit, but they're like very stiff, and also I just never liked the look of them. Going into the official ones, we have the Toa, and these were like definitely a massive upgrade over the Matoran, and as a first start, I would say that they succeed at what they do. Like, they have like instantly recognizable designs. You would definitely recognize Tahu's mask, as he is the mascot of the original Bionicles. Like, they all have their own unique weapons, and masks that have already been used before and will continue to be reused over and over. But as time goes on, I feel like these sets have gotten really outdated. I never really have any huge opinions on any of these guys, so like I'm gonna go ahead and throw them in will own for the collection. Again, there's nothing really wrong with them, but like you can definitely tell, like because they have like barely any armor, like the sets just feel kind of naked and it's kind of weird. Like I will say, of any of these though, I think Pohatu is by far the best, so he's gonna go up there. But besides that, yeah, I don't know. I also like Lewa's axe and Kopaka's sword. But, I mean, whatever. And so we have the Bohrok, as stated before, like, as they are the antagonistic force. Like, as you can see, like, early on, waves come with, like, 6 individual sets, which are basically the same, except they have, like, slightly different weapons, but they all have completely unique colors. And that's not really a hard rule, as you'll definitely see later on, as the sets do get very diverse. But compared to the Toa, I really like the Bohrok sets. Like, they're very simplistic, but the designs, I feel like of the older sets, these designs have held up exceptionally well. Most of my sets I left with my parents inside of their smelly garage, so they're probably all broken by now. But these guys, I do have them sitting on a shelf in their original containers. So all these guys go in A tier. I don't have any particular preference, so I'm not gonna rank them individually anymore unless there's like a significant difference with them. But I have actually owned this one twice, and this was actually the very first Bionicle I ever owned. So that's a bit of a fun fact. So moving on, with the very first wave of Bionicle, they introduced these mini vehicles and Rahi sets that come with like 2 individual creatures, and they come with like games within a game. Like, but first of all, we have Boxor, which I'm not gonna lie, before looking up this list, I completely forgot this set even existed, and I really wanted this set, but I just couldn't find it. So there we go. And yeah, so I kind of, even though I don't really care much for the Matoran designs, like it comes with like a small vehicle, and I've always liked the design of this one. Plus, you can like change it into like a completely different vehicle that gives it a completely different design. But of course, I never owned this, so I'm not gonna harp on it too much. And next up, we have Nui Rama, of the first of these Rahi sets. Like, so these are like mosquito things, or giant flies with like big arms. Like, first of all, if I saw this thing one of these things flying towards me, I would probably shit my pants. But this is another one I never had the privilege of owning, so that's gonna go up there. And the Nui Jaga. So one of the interesting things about these sets, you can like give them to your kids, and like they can get one set while you have the other. And one of the things with this is that you can pull a lever and strike at the masks to try to get their masks off, so it's like a game within a game. But this is another set that I never really owned. I will give it props because it's like one of the few early Bionicle sets to use the color purple, but unfortunately this was another one I never got to own. And next we have the Tarakava. These, I have no idea what these things are supposed to be in the first place. Like, I suppose they're supposed to be like kangaroos or something. Now, I kind of like the designs of these guys. Like, you can flick their arms. It's like a little boxing match. I've always liked the design of these, but again, this is another one I never owned. Trying to get some of these back in the day was like really difficult, and especially post-pandemic. Yeah, good luck trying to get any of these sets at all without bursting a hole in your wallet. And next up, we have Manas. So these are like giant enemy crabs or whatever the hell these are supposed to be. So what gives these things really cool novelty is that these are like the first, and as far as I know, the only remote control Bionicle sets out there. There are some Lego sets out there where you can actually remote control them and you can like flick their arms. I think that's really cool, and I think this is the only Bionicle set that has that. Again, unfortunately, this is another one I never owned. I would really like to own this one. And now, finally, we get one that I actually did manage to get my hands on pre-pandemic, is Muwaka and Cane Raw. So these are, I think Muwaka is supposed to be a bear and Cane Raw is supposed to be a bull, but given the designs, you could have fooled me in thinking this was like some sort of demon. So this one has a bit of an interesting function where you can like squeeze the abdomen and make the heads lunge forward and bite, and you use that to like pull the masks on their shoulders. And you pull those, and those like hold the arms up, arms up, but they like fall off. And it's actually a pretty cool game within a game. I managed to grab my hands on one of these before the pandemic, and spoiler warning, these were not cheap, as especially the older they get, the more expensive they get. So I love the novelty. I think the designs look really cool, and I love the function. I will say my biggest problem with them, owning them, is that functionality-wise, their feet, which are these treadmill things, they really do not like to stand properly, and it makes posing them a little weird. But besides that, I think the novelty and the function just puts them in the top of A tier for right now. Like, they're not quite GOAT status. If it wasn't for that, I think I would put them in GOAT. And next up, we have the Exo-Toa. So what this is it's like a super armor for the Toa. Like, you can just like open up the chest piece, move the head, and then put them inside there, and they're like all super powered and all that, and they use that to fight off the Bohrok. And design wise, I think this is like one of the best sets in the early era of Bionicle. Like, the design wise, this thing still holds up. An interesting story, like, I managed to I had to buy 2 of these things. The first one I bought brand new for like a reasonable price. Like, it was completely brand new, sealed, like, hadn't been touched. All of the bags were sealed, but one of the bags, like, had no parts in it. There was only like 1 or 2 parts in it, and I messaged the guy I bought it from on eBay, and he's like, what the hell? That makes no sense. Like, it should have been sealed, and I never got a refund because he thought I was bullshitting. I showed him proof, by the way, but that was nonsense. And the second one I got used, and it came with all the Toa Mana. They were a pretty solid deal. I think it was like $80, which, like, for the time, like, especially for the time, like, that's a very good deal. And just like the box sword, this is one that you can like turn into a completely different vehicle. And it gives it a bit more extra personality, but even then, I really like it. Overall, I think this is like the first GOAT in our tier, so this one's awesome. I really like this one. And next up, we have Kadok and Kadok. This was one that I used to own back in the day. I completely lost all the parts for the blue one, so I only had enough parts to build the red one. But yeah, you should never buy your kids like really expensive toys like that, because they will lose parts. I did, and I was a bit of an idiot for that. I did manage to like reclaim these many years later, and in terms of function, they're very similar to Moaka and Kane Raw, except they're just giant dragons, and like, who the hell doesn't like giant dragons or dinosaurs in this fact? Like, in terms of designs, they do like look very archaic, but like the function is really cool, and you can also do way more with their functions and posing. And overall, I think they look very awesome. So these are also going to go in GOAT status. And yeah, so this is also a pretty mixed bag. Like, I know some of the Rahi would actually go a lot higher, but the thing is, I never owned any of them. So say la vie. So next up, we have the Matoran. So in universe, there's like this game called Ko-Li, and it's basically just ice hockey, except no ice in it. Now, again, to give them credit, these are a lot better than the ones prior, where they just fling the discs, as they come with the staffs, and you can put like discs in them, and that's pretty nice. And you can also turn the torsos. Again, these are ones I never owned, and frankly, I really do not care. Also, hang on a second. I just realized. Oh, okay, never mind. I thought these were like the exact same set, but I can tell that they have different masks. But again, never owned them, never cared. And so next up, we have the Turaga, which are... Wait, hang on a minute. There's only like 5 of them. Okay. Hang on, where's the 5th one? Okay, I'll just cross that bridge whenever I get to him. So, these are basically the Bohrok Va designs, except they have the Toa skulls as feet, which is just lovely. And I really liked their designs. I like the weapons that they have. These are very unique, and some of them have like not been used very often. But again, like, I'm just gonna go ahead and put these guys in never owned, don't care about. I don't know, maybe I'll change my mind someday, but as is, like, yeah, these are just, like, kind of whatever sets to me. And next up, we have the Toa Nuva. So, in the leap from 2001 to 2002 and 2003, they took the same designs that they originally got, but just bulked them up a little more and gave them silver platings. And overall, I think the designs are a lot better. Tahu gets these dual fire swords, Gali gets these axes and propellers, Pohatu gets these claws, Lewa gets the swords, Anua gets these chainsaws, which is badass, and then Kopaka gets these ice skates. And now, overall, like, these are all very solid, and in terms of visual designs, they hold up a lot better than their original counterparts, and you can, like, give them interesting functions by like, putting different weapons on their feet depending on the Toa. In terms of function, they're not that much different compared to them, but in terms of designs, they're overall way better, so I'm gonna go ahead and put them in B tier. And again, I will say Pohatu is probably my favorite of the three, because since his torso is basically upside down, you can like fling his legs and that gives it more, and it's at least more interesting. Overall, they're very solid. Like, there's not very many complaints I would say about these. And then after that, we have the Rahkshi. This part of the story is based on the Mask of Light, where basically the story is just essentially Lord of the Rings, where Frodo takes the ring to Mount Doom to burn it, and he's being chased by Sauron's ring wraiths. So the Rahkshi are basically the ring wraiths, and Makuta is Sauron of this universe. And so, like, while they haven't like completely evolved that much, like in terms of like posing and design, they like added these ball joints, and it lets you bend their legs and all that, giving them better posability. And also, besides that, the designs are just really cool. They all have these unique spines, and the staff weapons are really cool. And they also come these slug things that go inside of their backs, and I think the intent was to put them on the Toa's masks. But overall, I think in terms of like the design and the evolution of what they was trying to do, like, these guys definitely get an A tier. I think I like them better than the Bohrok overall. And if I had to like pick a favorite, I think the blue one is my favorite. I don't think they're like quite GOAT status, but overall I think these are like some of the better villains in especially the early era. And speaking of Bohrok, we had the Bohrok-Kal. So, like, the Bohrok are just these swarms of, like, creatures where there's, like, a billion of them of every single color. But what these guys are is that they are, like, special individuals that have gotten, like, superpowers. And the way they demonstrate that is that they give them silver colors. And that's about it. So the weapons are really cool, and there's a couple of them that don't get reused very often, but at the same time, there are some that do get reused, and you're definitely going to see some of those. Like, I do like these guys just as much as the original Bohrok on paper, but in practice, like, I'm not as impressed with the coloring. Like with the original Bohrok, they have these unique colors that give them a bit more distinct value. And also, I just like the transparent covers that shows off the masks things. Here, though, you don't really get to see them because they're just, like, completely silver and they're not transparent. So, because of that and that alone, I'm gonna put them in solid. I'm gonna put them below, because overall, like, I don't like the changes that they gave them. So again, there's nothing wrong with them, but like overall, like in terms of the novelty, I think they're a slight step down, as they just recycled the same sets over and over, which is a tad disappointing. It's not technically their fault overall, but like it's like from a business perspective, sure, because of the story, but yeah, I'm not the biggest fan. And so next up, we have the Titan sets. And so the Titan sets are essentially just bigger sets. Normal sets like the Toa Nuva and the Bohrok-Kal are basically just like $8. Like, these guys are so much bigger that they essentially costed around $20. Yeah, imagine nowadays like that they used to cost $20, right? So first of all, we have Takua and Puku. In the story, Takua is essentially Frodo, as he's the guy who's trying to take the Mask of Light to like a specific location. And Puku is just his giant pet crab. In terms of Takua's design, yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of the Matoran designs, as I've said many times. There's barely any functionality. I like his color scheme, though. As for Puku, like, you can't really do a lot with the giant crab, as it doesn't really look too much like a crab. And the way they try to work around this is to put pipes around the body to like simulate the shell, but it doesn't really look at it much like that. It just looks more mechanical and less natural. And I mean, I guess that's kind of the point. And yeah, the pincers, they don't really do a whole lot. And yeah, you can definitely see that the Bohrok-Kal weapons don't get as much uniqueness. Although, to its credit, I do like the function at least a little bit. So like there's wheels underneath Puku, and you can push her forward and her legs move. I think that's pretty cool, but this is a set I never managed to reclaim. I used to own this one, but I don't anymore. And so, like, I'm kind of mixed on this one overall, so I'll put this one at the top of C tier. So, like, but I'm just not that impressed by it overall. So Jala and Gecko. Now this one I kind of wanted because, like, of course, it's another Matoran set, which, I mean, who gives a shit? But I really like the design of the Gecko bird, and the function seems kind of interesting, but I never owned this one, so I'm going to go ahead and put this one at never owned, but would like to. So it's mostly for the novelty, but, like, overall, it's kind of impossible to get your hands on, like, $20 sets when scalpers are selling them for, like, triple that. And now we have the villain of the Mask of Light era, or in this instance, I compared this story to Lord of the Rings, how Makuta was essentially Sauron. This is basically Sauron in the original Mask of Light era. And as far as the villain goes, he's really got to live up to the edgy design. And you can definitely tell with this design alone that Bionicle was basically just Lego but for emo kids. And I was an emo kid, so of course it appeals to me. In terms of design, this guy is awesome. I really like the spear, I like the mask, I like the armor. And what's interesting about the mask is that it has like 2 different faces, and so as you can see in the artwork here, like you can like put it down. This is the way I put it down, but he has a face on the back, on the top of his head, that you can flip around. Now I don't particularly like this face nearly as much as I normally feel like I should, but at the same time, I do respect the novelty, and also it's really funny. It looks like it has a tiny Pillsbury Doughboy on top of the face, and I think that's pretty neat. In terms of function, he doesn't really have a whole lot that you can do besides having a strong fundamental design. In terms of strong fundamental design, I think he's really cool. Like you can, I mean, sure, you can like twist on the back of his torso, and it like moves his upper torso left and right, and that's pretty nice. In terms of design, like, I'm putting him straight into S tier, top of S tier for right now. Like, I love this design. Even the limited movement of the legs and the minor complaints I have with the back of the head are not enough to like deter it. And in terms of the face thing, it's just a complaint. It's just a minor nitpick. I don't really care too much. Overall, great set. And speaking of great sets, we have the 7th Toa, Takutanuva. So, like the whole Ring of Power sort of thing, the Mask of Light is basically just the Ring of Power, and Takua decides to wear it, and he becomes Takutanuva, the Toa of Light. And with this set in particular, so like they just give him a completely unique mask. And so in terms of design, like he's basically just a much fancier version of the Toa Nuva, but with a completely unoriginal weapon. He's got the staff. Like, there's nothing wrong with the staff. It looks nice and all that. But the showstopper here, besides the actual golden armor, is the vehicle he wears. So, like, once the Rahkshi are defeated, the 6 individual Rahkshi are, like, stripped apart and turned into a vehicle because, yeah, sure, why not? And the vehicle design not only looks cool, but it has the function where you can, like, flip the switch, and then the legs, like, turn backwards to give it some aerodynamicy. Like, overall, this is just a great set. Not a whole lot to complain about, but also, if you manage to get like a special edition version of this that came with the Mask of Light movie, or at least I think, you get like a transparent glittery mask, and I think that's a really cool detail. So overall, this is another one that I'm going to go ahead and throw in S tier. I think I prefer Makuta, so overall, but yeah, this is a great set. Then last but not least for this era, we have a fusion between Makuta and Takutanuva. So at the end of the Mask of Light story, they fuse together and create Takutanuva. And if you've ever seen the Mask of Light movie, you know he looks nothing like this. So in terms of design, basically this one's just a bulked up version of Takutanuva. And in terms of the upgrades, it's not really that much. Like the hands are different. He's got these shoulder blades that you can move up and down. I think that's kind of nice. But I really like the staff upgrade. I think the staff looks kind of cool. And if you get the special edition Takutanuva set, like it comes with this unique mask that is basically just the same as Makuta's mask, except it's more angular, and it looks like something that would come straight out of Super Hot. But overall, like, I'm not as impressed with it. Like, there's other sets that are like Titan sets that are like official fusion sets, and of all the ones, like this one just feels like the laziest. But overall, in terms of the design and function, I think it looks pretty cool, so I'm gonna put it at the bottom of A, because overall I like the design. It's just it doesn't do too much compared to other fusion sets. And so next up we have 2004. So like from 2003 to 2004, you can definitely tell there was a huge quality shift. It's like a lot of the sets look a lot nicer and a lot cleaner. and have a ton of added functionalities to them. And then you can also see that with the Matorans. So all of these I did own. Like, the interesting function with all of these is that they come with disc launchers that you can, like, squeeze and then it fires the disc off. And that's a very common thing you're going to be seeing throughout most of the sets this year. Now, I did used to own these things, but in terms of overall function, like, I do have the same problems I do with the other Matoran from the previous sets. But since I did own them, I do have to rank them. And I'm not too impressed with them. They're going to go in will only own for the collection. Like, they're going to go at the top of that. Because, like, the shooty disc launcher thing is pretty cool. But they don't really impress me all that much. I like the unique colors in the masks. But even then, that's just... So, they're just kind of okay. Like, I don't care too much about them. But what I do care about are the Toa. So, in terms of, like, functionality compared from Toa Nuva to the Toa Metru... Like, these guys are a huge step up. They added, like, double-sided ball joint socket entrances. And it gives them, like, improved posing, improved design. And overall, they added a bunch of new parts that, like, give them a lot... make them look cleaner and a lot more fulfilling, I guess. And the added posing does add a lot. And plus, what's interesting about these Toa is that a lot of them really have unique weapons that don't get used all that much, if at all. But they also do have the classic functions where you can, like, take their weapons and put them on their back to give them unique designs. Like Matau, you can put his swords on his back. Vakama, you can do the same thing, but he has a disc launcher that looks raw as hell. Gali, you can do the same thing with her axes, and with Wanua, you can fuse his hands together to to turn his like claw things into drills. That's pretty cool. And Nuju, you can give him ice picks. Like on Niwa here, on the other hand, like really got the short end of the stick. Like these anchors at the ends of chains or whatever the hell these are supposed to be. You can't do a whole lot with those, but like overall, compared to the previous Toa, these are a massive improvement, I would definitely say. So these are going to go up in A tier, every single one of them. In the opposite way, though, we have this version of the ring race, which are the Vahki. So these guys are basically this equivalent to the Rahkshi. They have their unique weapons. You can swing their arms back and forth like you could do with the Rahkshi, but they also have these disc launchers, and that with their unique discs, and that's really about it, though. In terms of design, I'm not really as impressed. I've never really been as impressed with these guys as I have with the Rahkshi. To their credit, I really like the colors of the heads, and I think they really make them stand out a little bit. And the weapons are also pretty cool, but but again, these are some of these weapons do get reused, and like sure, you can like flip their torsos upside down and make them crawl on all fours because for some reason they do that, because they're like mindless machines and mindless sentinel machines, like bent out to like destroy or whatever. So in terms of designs, they're okay. Like I'll go ahead and I'm gonna put them in like will only own for the collection. I'm not that big into these guys, never have been. Like they're not bad, but they just seem like Diet Rahkshi to me. And then like these things I just kind of put in between to like spice things up in the list. So first of all, we have whatever the hell this thing is, Rahkshi with a disc tail launcher. I mean, that's kind of cool, but I have literally never seen this thing before, so that's gonna go, what the fuck is this shit? And then we have, I assume this is supposed to be Taraga Lacan. And this is another set I've literally never seen before in my entire life. But it's also one I'm like, why would I own this one? So this is going to go in never owned and don't care about. So I can definitely see this one being official. But at the same time, like, why would you want this? And now we have the Titans of 2004. And they're a bit more of a mixed bag, in my opinion, than they were in the last year. Now, and I say that, but I've never owned Jalan Gecko. But so first of all, we have Nadiki, which is basically just a Vahki on steroids because he has the same head as the Vahki. But in terms of design, this guy looks really cool. He's just a spider crab dude, and he's also got some pretty interesting functions. Like he can open and close the pincers, and that's pretty awesome. And you can also fold the legs. You can't really move the legs that much. You can just move them back and forth, and then fold the legs up to like put them in a specific position so that he can fly. And yes, if you didn't know, a spider that can literally fly, that's pretty cool. And also, I forgot the disc launcher. So I will say I love the design overall, but the function kind of nets him down just a little bit. So I'm going to put him in A tier. So like he would be GOAT status if you could do more with the legs. And yes, I realize that's more of a function of the time. And next up we have Kreka. And now this, in terms of design and function, I have very mixed feelings about him. So on one hand, like the design is quite solid. He's got like the laser cyborg eye, as you can see. And also he has this really cool function where his disc launcher is on his shoulder. And there's a switch on his back. You can like cause it to move up and down, which is really cool. But at the same time, he has a function where you can like twist a thing on his back, and it makes his chest and head move left and right. And in conjunction with the disc launcher, like the function is just so awkward. It makes me think, why did you bother doing this? And it just feels like it was just put there as an obligation. So like I don't really like that. And also, so like it's just a minor thing. What's kind of annoying about his feet is that they're so damn wide, and like it's not that big of a deal in terms of posing if you're just trying to mess around with it. But if you're like trying to put them on a shelf and try to create as much space as possible, yeah, you gotta put one foot in front of the other, and that's just a little awkward as hell. But overall, like this one, I am kind of mixed. It has some, like the positives I will say outweigh the negatives, but I'm gonna put him at like the bottom of B, because there's just some really weird intricacies that really kind of drag them down a little bit from A. And then next up we have Turaga, Duma, and Nivok. And so once again, I've never really cared too much for the Turaga Matoran designs because they don't really do a whole lot with them. However, in Duma's case, like they gave him like a unique skull color that is just black and orange. And also I really like the mask design that they gave him. It's like a combination of red and black. And as far as I know, this is like one of the very few masks that they don't reuse. And so I think that's kind of nice. So in terms of the Nivok, which is admittedly where most of my complaints with this set come in terms of the design, like it looks perfectly fine whenever Turaga Duma's inside of his chest. But when you take Duma out, this thing looks like it could eat a fucking sandwich. In terms of function, I'm of two mindsets of it. I mean, like you can open the chest and close it, and that's perfectly a-okay. And his main function is that you can move these wires like in and out to like move his wings to simulate flapping. Like that's kind of cool, but that's just about it. Like overall, the design both looks really cool and looks really weird at the same time, and in a way that I really don't like. So, like, in conjunction with both of those things, this is, like, the lowest ranked Titan of this series so far, anyway. So, I'm putting him at C tier. He would probably be, like, B if it wasn't for the weird design and the functions being so limiting. So, I don't know. I guess I'm a bit of a hypocrite in that sense. But it's just my opinion. And then next up, we have a special edition set of Toa Likan and Kikanalo. So in terms of the design, this is basically just another one of the Toa Metru, but with like golden parts. And this is like one of the few instances they actually use this mask. And what makes this set in particular really stand out is that Toa Likan has these unique blades that as far as I know, I could be wrong, that they have never bothered using these swords ever again. Like they're designed so intricately, you can like put them together and it makes like a shield, and it looks really cool. But also there's the Kikanalo, which is like a sort of rhinoceros kangaroo looking hybrid creature. But overall, I think the design of this one is also very cool. You can't really do a whole lot other than put Toa Likan on top of them. But overall, this is a very cool set, and I actually did manage to own this one back in the day. This one is going to go in A tier. Actually, you know what? This one's going in S tier, probably in the bottom of S tier. I really wish I could get my hands on this one again, but like trying to find a complete set of this one at a reasonable price is like impossible. Like even trying to find a complete one is impossible. If you still have this one, consider yourself very lucky. And then finally for this year, we have Ultimate Duma. And Ultimate is definitely the best way to describe it. So I mentioned before how there was like multiple fusion sets between the Titans over the years, starting with Takutanuva. This is a fusion between Nidiki, Kreka, and Turaga Duma. And Ultimate Duma, like that's just the name. Like, it's actually just Makuta again, except he's just like gotten really bulked up. In terms of function, there's really not a whole lot you can do with him, like besides moving the fingers on his left hand, and I imagine if you're obsessive compulsive, this is probably going to be your worst nightmare because he has the completely different hands. So without the function, like what does this guy have exactly? Simply put, like excellent fundamental design. Like the design is so cool. You can open his mouth, but like the wings don't really do a whole lot, but they're just there to look badass as all hell. And in terms of size, this is one of the biggest sets in the entire series. I actually have this guy sitting on my shelf with some of my amiibos. Like, you're not gonna get to see it because I refuse to get my camera out for that. The right hand with the Takutanuva limbs, like, yeah, those are Takutanuva's limbs. This just screams like, I am better than you. And yeah, this is so much better than most sets. And if you get the special edition one that comes with all 3 sets, which is like $50, which I just found out earlier today, and you get like a unique mask that goes on top of it, makes the set look that much better. So overall, this is probably my favorite set so far. This one's going straight S tier, like no ifs, ands, or buts. This one's awesome. And then next up we have 2005, which is set in the exact same city, except now it's like overrun with like poisonous spiders that have mutated the entire land and like turn things to shit. And first of all, we have the Matoran / Taraga versions of these called the Rahaga, which I think is supposed to be like a fusion of like Rahkshi and Taraga. In terms of the designs, they're just kind of whatever in my personal opinion. Like, they really don't like do a whole lot with the body, and it's like you can tell like they're just arms and legs on top of a head. And like in terms of the weapons, they really just reuse the individual weapons from the Rahkshi, and I don't know, that just feels really lazy to me. I guess the unique benefit that these guys have compared to others is that they have the ripcord things. If you remember, like back in this era, there was like a crazy thing going around where there was like where you could like use ripcords to like have these propeller helicopter things, pull them, and then they just go flying. Like nearly every single set, if not every single set in this year of Bionicle had these ripcord propeller things, and I think that's like the most interesting thing you can do with these. And to the credit of the Rahaga, it looks like they have their own unique colors, but I don't know, that's just not enough to impress me. So I did used to own these. I'm tempted to put them in will only own for the collection. Part of me wants to put them in F tier, but like but I don't hate them that much, I guess, because like F tier is just restricted for the sets that I really hate. So overall, will only own for the collection. They're like at the bottom though. I don't like these very much. And then we have whatever the hell these are supposed to be. I've literally never seen these before, so they're gonna go in, what the fuck is this shit? And I'm assuming this one came out around the same year. If not, like, who cares? It's just going there. And then next up, we have the Toa Hordika. So these are the exact same characters as the Toa Metru, except they've been mutated by the Visorak venom and given these really cool weapons. And what's really cool about them is that they have never been reused, at least for the most part. There's some exceptions, like Vakama's flamethrower did get reused like once or twice, but like for the most part, the rest of them have never been reused before. Like in terms of function, you can't really like turn the arms back and forth, but their right arm has this function where you can like move it up and down from the elbow, and that's pretty cool. Though again, if you're obsessive compulsive, these are definitely not the sets for you. Ignoring the fact that all the artwork has their big arm on their left arm, or right arm vice versa, they're all the right arm in terms of the instructions. Or maybe I just built them incorrectly. But overall, I think the designs really carry them, and also I just really like the idea. So they're all going in A tier. I think if I had to pick a favorite, I think Nuju is my favorite because I really like the blue weapons, and Wenua also gets a special spot. Like Mato has his swords. Like Aniwa also really kind of got cocked in this scenario, as his ball thing is like the least interesting weapon out of all of these in my opinion, but they're all right, I suppose. And then next up we have the Visorak, which are so sorry if you have arachnophobia, but these are essentially the primary villainous force, kinda. They're just a bunch of dangerous, evil giant spiders. Arachnophobia, anyone? And so they of course have the usual ripcord, but what's really cool about these guys is that you can push their heads and it like causes their mandibles to squeeze. Just like with the Toa Hordika, what's really interesting is that the mandibles never managed to get reused at all. In terms of designs, they're very cool. They don't really like change all that much, and you'll notice that's a very common theme with a lot of these sets. Overall, I think these are very good. I think these are probably my favorite villainous things overall. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put these guys in S tier. And another thing is that there's a fusion set that is sort of official, but not really enough to be on this list. Is the called the Zyvon, which is like a Hydra sort of thing that is a fusion of all six of these tiny spiders, and this is like one of the coolest official fusion sets of all time ever. I wanna like buy these again just so I can have a Zyvon on my shelves. Like, the dream. If I was a billionaire, I would buy all these again and do that. And then 2005 is kind of the starting year where they introduced like these playset sort of things with minifigures. I never owned any of these, mainly because I just never really liked the idea of the playsets at all. So I never really bothered or cared about any of these. So they're gonna go in never owned, don't care. I imagine if you really like the idea behind them, like you might find some enjoyment out of that, but I never really did. So normally we go to the Titans, we have these special edition sets of the Rahaga before they turned into the Rahaga, but there's only like 2 of them. How cool would it have been if they had like introduced like an extra wave of limited edition sets for all of the Rahaga before they, as Toa? Like, how cool would have that been? So we only have Norik and Iruni. So with these guys in particular, what makes them, they're basically the same build as the Toa Metru from last year, at the year prior, but they have these staffs, completely unique masks, and these shields with the ripcords inside of them. Design-wise, I think they're pretty cool. Norik is going to have to go and never own, but would like to, because I swear to God, trying to find this guy was like really impossible. Not that I really tried that much as far as I remember. But Iruni, I did own this one. And I'm going to go ahead and put him in B tier. Overall, I'm not too super impressed with him, but overall he's pretty good. We got more play sets. These are gonna go in never owned. And next we have the Titans of 2005. First of all, we have Visorak, who is one of the primary villains, as he's the ruthless king who takes over Metru Nui. And so in terms of design, he's got a very striking red color with a lot of red parts that rarely get used, if at all. And he's got some unique weapons at his disposal. So again, like, you could probably tell if you are if you're obsessive compulsive, this is definitely not your year. With his left arm, he's got this retractable blade that you can move back and forth. And his left arm is like completely loose, where you're meant to like swing it back and forth. And whereas his left arm is a bit more stable, and it has like a three-fingered claw. And since you couldn't really put it anywhere else, like, this is where his ripcord goes, and I think that's very cool. So overall, his base design is pretty cool, and the functions are very nice, but I would say if I had to make any nitpicks, I would say it's with his eyes. It doesn't look that bad, it doesn't look that awkward on the artwork, but in terms of like in person, like, it is very noticeable. Granted, given what they were trying to do with the design, they couldn't really do anything about that to make it less awkward, but overall this is a great set. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and put this guy in A tier. I think this is one of the better Titan designs so far, but not nearly as good as the next set, Hordika, which, first of all, while I was like trying to look up another set to try to buy this one again, I managed to come across some very disturbing articles on this one, which I really wish I didn't know, as this character has a very, very disturbed fan base. Like, and people make the joke like, oh, stepping on Legos, but I didn't know that the people who like this set are the ones who wanted to be stepped on in the first place. But besides that, in terms of design, this one is phenomenal, and no, not for the reasons you're thinking. So in her right hand, she's got the ripcord, which is literally just attached to her arm, and the ripcord, you have to pull it, and you have to pull it really hard to get the spinner to fly off. But in her left arm is a staff, and one of the unique functions that gets used here and never again for some reason is you can spin the staff and it like turns along with the gears, which is really cool. They wanted to give her high heels, and if they had to do it, they did a pretty solid job. Overall, this set is going to get get a very solid S tier. Yeah, this is definitely one of the better ones. Not for the ones you're thinking, assholes. And then next up we have Kitongu. So this one is definitely standout. Visorak has a very bright red coloration, and Hordika is just black and silver. This one is just bright orange, and it really stands out because the head is very unorthodox. Like, it's just a Bohrok shield, and it's just a giant Cyclops. So with his functions, he does have like the same spinny thing that Hordika has, except it's just a giant shield base sort of thing. And in his left hand, he's got this weird pickaxe thing. So where would you put the spinny thing, you may ask? Well, you can actually open his chest, and that's where it is. And I think that's a pretty nice compromise. And he also does like a very similar foot thing compared to Kreka, except they did it a lot better. It's not as wide. Overall, this is another very good set. I don't really have any complaints with him. So this one is gonna go in A tier. He just never really stands out in terms of being a favorite of mine, you know? Yeah, so there's only like 3 Titan sets besides the Fusion set, which is Valparaiso. So, like, this one is essentially just Hordika on steroids, like, but with more color, like adding, instead of just completely black and silver, it adds orange and red from Visorak. As it's a fusion set, of course you would add that. And overall, the design is pretty solid overall. They gave him like 4 arms because his big arms have the spinny blade things with Visorak's fingers and Hordika's staff. So they gave him like 4. They gave him like an extra small appendages to put the spinner on, similar to how that functions with Hordika, which I think that's kind of weird that they bother giving him 4 arms. I think that's like the main complaint I have with the design, but I guess if they had to have the spinner on, then I guess they really just had no other choice but to do it this way. And also, this was kind of like a prototype phase, as they put like 2 leg pieces on his legs to give him extra stability, as it's kind of a prototype of the joint connectors on the back of the legs of every single Titan set afterwards. Overall, like, compared to Ultimate Duma, I'm not as impressed with this one. Like, it's a pretty solid set, don't get me wrong, but, like, I'm gonna go ahead and give this guy A tier. I'm gonna go ahead and put him, like, here. I think that's perfectly fine. But, like, compared to, like, pushing the envelope, it's literally just Hordika, but, oh, you're bigger. Whereas Ultimate Duma is just a completely different beast altogether. But is it gonna get any better with the next year? Oh, I don't know. So 2006 was another, like, just fundamental evolution of the previous years, like adding new parts and adding different functions. Like, if you were a fan of Bionicle, then you had to ask any Bionicle fan what their favorite year was. It was most likely 2006. This is like probably the most goated year of Bionicle in the history of the series overall. Even back in like the 2010 era, where I got back into Bionicle trying to collect some of the older sets I missed, trying to get some of these sets for a decent price even back then was really difficult. And if it was difficult back then, try imagining how difficult it is nowadays. That's just how good this series of sets really is. And then first of all, we're starting with the Matoran, and I say goated, and yet we have these guys. So these guys I have never owned, and they don't really, and all they really did is they took the masks of the Toa Metru, but they just made them tinier. This is another Rahaga situation that I just really hate that they do this kind of thing, because that's one of the reasons I really don't like the Matoran sets, is that they just give them like the short end of they just get the silver spoon, like in terms of the set designs. Overall, I never really owned any of these, so they're gonna go and never owned but don't care about. Like, I think they're better than a lot of these down here. Again, you're just like, yeah, but who gives a shit? And then next up we have the Toa and Nika, and this is where it gets really good. So the Toa have like these unique torso parts that will become staples throughout the rest of the series' life, at least for the first wave. And with the Toa and Nika get these unique heads and masks that have never really been replicated before, as far as I know. With this year in particular, the gimmick from before was like the ripcords and the disc launchers. Here it's these Zammer sphere launchers. Push the thing on the back of the gun and it like fires the spheres. Don't fire those at your significant other or sibling. Like, you will be set in for a quick divorce after that. But what makes these guys stand out in particular is, besides the Zamrosphere launchers being able to hold all of their spheres, is they have these swords where you press a button, then it causes the sword to flash for a few seconds. Now granted, I own these sets, like their swords don't work anymore, the batteries are just completely dead, a real shame. But like, how cool is that? This was like the first instance that they actually did something like that. And it makes the sets really stand out, besides the swords and the giant Zamrosphere launchers. Like, some of these sets have, like, unique colorations, like Toa Holly and Huki and Kongu have silver colorations on that blend in with the green and blue with their respective parts, and it looks really nice. It looks really nice. Not very many sets have managed to do that. Even then, some of the sets like Jala and Matoro also have transparent parts that are very unique to them and them alone. And Nuparu also has these claws and a shoulder-mounted thing on top of his mask, make him look like he's really into BDSM. I would say Huki is probably the one who gets the silver spoon here. He also gets the added chain that connects to his sword and his back. So overall, like, these are easily by far the best Toa sets we've seen yet. And in my opinion, they still hold up very well. So these are all going in S tier. These are definitely some of the best sets that we've seen in a long time, and we probably will see. I don't know. We'll just have to see. Overall, like, Bionicle did good here. And then next up, we have what the actual hell is this thing supposed to be? So it's like a Piraka skull with like claws. Like, though, that's really impressive. Like, what? And whatever the hell this thing is supposed to be. And goodness gracious, they really did have some, like, crap shovelware here and there, now didn't they? So next we have the villains of this particular year, the Piraka. These are, in terms of, like, the Zamrospheres, like, these are kind of a downgrade compared to the Toa and Nika, as you can only hold one Zamrosphere as opposed to holding all four that come with the sets. But what these guys have going for them is, like, strong fundamental design and just the edgiest bullshit designs you've ever seen before. Like, they have like the big stupid grins on their faces, spikes that lean from their heads to their tails and also their arms. And what makes them particularly stand out, besides the unique feet which come with the claws that will become another staple part, is they come with these these incredibly badass double-sided blades that come with, like, completely different functions. Like, Hakan has the laser gun that also comes to the claw. Vezok has a harpoon with a buzzsaw. Avak has that thing. Thok has a pickaxe and a gun. And in my particular favorite, it has to go to Zaktan, specifically because he has a 3-pronged scissor blade. That's just really cool. I think overall they're slightly worse than the Toa and Nika. Go straight into S tier, no doubt in my mind. So overall, this is a pretty good year for Bionicle so far, isn't it? And then whatever the hell this thing is, that, like, you just go over there with your friend over there. Like, fuck off, who gives a shit? And so before we get into more GOAT status, we have this unique set, which is basically a fusion set, but given unique treatment, called Ernak. So I do remember this set from, like, back in the day, as it's just a fusion between 3 of the Piraka, but it got its own treatment. As I remember back in the day, this one was, like, really hard to find at a very cheap price. Like, I think back in the day, this was probably the single most expensive Bionicle of all time. I don't know if that's necessarily true anymore, but if you manage to own this thing and it's in very good condition, consider selling it. If you're in a tight pinch, you'll probably get like $1,000 or something for this guy. And that right there is very telling. So this one would go in never owned but would like to. But I don't know. Like, it's at the bottom. So I'm not too impressed with the design. I guess it's just the novelty that really carries them. And then we get to the Titans, and gonna spoil some things here. These are some of the best Titan sets that we've ever gotten in the entire series. They don't really have any unique functions as far as, like, disc launchers or spinners, or none of them even had the Zamrosphere launchers. But what carries them all is with strong fundamental design. And do they all carry up? Yes. So first of all, we got Axon, who's just like a very short but very bulky motherfucker. This guy, like, with just red and silver coloring, what this guy has, obviously it's in the name, he has a really sick axe, and this axe just looks really sick. And what makes him really interesting is this is the first Bionicle, and so far the only one, as far as I know anyway, to have like actual movable fingers on his arms. He's got like 4 fingers, but you can like move them individually, and it just adds to his impressive girth. This dude existed in real life. Like, that axe looks like it will hit pretty damn hard. Also, every single one of these sets has these unique joint like these things on their ankles that like connects to give them extra stability, and you'd think that would get in the way, but overall it doesn't really pan out all that well. So overall, Axon is going to get a very strong S tier. This is another really good set. So next up we have Brutaka, which is the parallel to Axon with a silver and red coloring. Brutaka here has a very gold and blue and dark blue coloring, which makes him really stand out, but mostly the gold makes him really pop. Again, he doesn't have really any unique functions like ball shooters or whatever, but he has like these individual arms that have like these blades that he can fold onto his back to make him look a little bulkier. Like, unlike Voparak, I think it looks a bit more natural, and also the way you can pose them makes it look more natural, I would say. And even then, you can just fold them behind his back and you don't really see them all that much. But overall, what makes him really stand out is that giant double-bladed sword. Like, this is probably my favorite looking weapon in the entire series, and this part does not get distributed, but I guarantee you it's gonna stand out a lot more to me. Overall, this is one of my favorite sets of all time. This is gonna go straight to the top of S tier, as this is probably my favorite set overall so far. I had to pay like an extra 20 bucks to get him back in the day, because even back then these sets were really expensive, but like this is worth it. This is one of my favorites overall. And then next up we have Vezon and Fenrakk. Vezon, like, this is probably the overall main antagonist of him, is he's like a separate 7th Piraka who just kind of defected and then got fused with a giant spider who turned into this giant dragon spider thing. Vezon has a different fundamental design compared to the rest of the Piraka. Is first of all, he's bulkier, and he also has a very unique cape that just makes him seem like the villain. But his only downside, I would say, is that he doesn't have a unique weapon compared to the other Piraka, but he's got the giant staff. But the real star of the show would have to go to the Fenrakk spider. Like, fundamentally, this design looks really cool, and of the Titans, he's like the only one to have a unique function. Like, Vezon can sit on the back of the spider, sure, but like you can open and close the mouth, and the mouth and the head just looks really cool, and design-wise it holds up very well. And it's a function and it's a design that doesn't really get used all that often, but whenever it does, you're sure to remember it. Overall, this is another great design, and this one, I can comfortably say, gets another S tier, like another one of my favorite sets overall. Before we move on to the next one, we have a special edition set called Umbra. This is another limited edition set, which basically means he doesn't really have any unique parts. He's basically just a big old boy with like spikes everywhere. But unlike the other Titan sets, he does have some unique functions. Like, first of all, you notice he has like the giant double-edged spear, which is just 2 of the Toa Inika set swords that get used for him. Like, he in particular gets Huki and Matoro's swords, and of course you get the light up function. And also, strangely enough, he also has the ripcord spinner, which has not gotten used at all before in such a long time. But I think it's a pretty welcome one. He also has the Piraka's glowy eye thing that you can do with him. And overall, design-wise, this guy looks very cool, even if his color scheme is just a little weird. I don't think it's that bad. He also has rollerblades. On paper, that's really cool. In practice, my biggest complaint with this set is trying to set him up on a shelf, and good lord, trying to get him to stand up without him flying off of the shelf is really annoying. So because of that, I have to knock him down a tier, but overall, this is gonna get another A tier. Like, yeah, right there. So he's gonna get a solid A tier, but the rollerblade thing just really knocks him down from S tier. And so here we have, I'm not even 100% positive, but these are all in the exact same year. But these are more play sets, never really cared about them, so who gives a shit. And then for this year, we have the 4th and surprisingly final major fusion set between any of the Titans, as they kind of stopped doing that for some reason. But man, they really went out with a bang with Vezon and Cardus. So this is a fusion set of Vezon and Fenrakk, Axon, and Brutaka. And in terms of Vezon, like, he doesn't really change all that much. Like, the spear changes slightly, and he gets his left arm replaced with, like, axe as a shield. And, like, it makes him look a lot cooler. It doesn't really change all that much, but what changes is the the Fenrakk spider turns into a giant-ass dragon, Cardus. And in terms of strong fundamental design, this is probably the strongest fundamental design of any fusion set, let alone any set in the series overall. Like, he's got the big-ass dragon feet, still looks impressive to this day, the tail looks really cool. And his wings actually move and can fold, and oh my god, this is just such an awesome set. It's just an awesome set. It doesn't really have a whole lot of function besides the wings and also the mouth. He has the same mouth function as Fenrakk, so the Fenrakk head looks like barely any different. It just gives him a couple spikes, but overall, it's just such a solid design. And okay, I say it's a solid design. It's a fantastic design. Spoiler warning, this one is going to go in S tier. This is probably my favorite set in the entire Bionicle canon overall. I'm dead serious. It's at the very least my favorite of 2006, but overall, this is probably my favorite set overall so far. So like looking at this list overall so far, you can tell that 2006 was a banger year. Like most of the sets, if not all of them, besides the Matoran, were at easy S tiers. I wonder if they're gonna go ahead and continue that with 2007. So in 2007, like all the Toa and Nika are traveling into the sea, so this is a very underwater heavy theme, and I think it's a pretty solid set. Like, so back in the day, this was kind of the part where I was starting to lose interest in Bionicle, because I only got like 2 sets, then I quit for a while, and I didn't get back into it until 2009, so a lot of these I had to rediscover. First of all, we had the Matoran sets, kinda, so there's only like 4 of these, kinda, so there's like 2 Matoran and 2 whatever the hell these things are supposed to be, Rahkshi with razor blades on their lips, whatever. So in terms of design, I can definitely say these look a lot better than the past few years, but overall, I never owned any of these, so they're gonna go and never own. So like, I think if I was gonna have any Matoran sets, I think these would be the ones I would want. But overall, they're just kind of okay. Like, I don't particularly care too much about any of them. And then we got these tiny monstrosities. You can just throw them here. Like, who gives a shit? Like, even having Axon's face is not going to get me to want to care about you. And so we have the Toa Mahri. And starting with this wave, to give it some credit, that like all of the previous Toa and villain sets or whatever are basically just the same, just with different colors. Here though is kind of where they started to try and diversify the designs a bit more, so that you're not just buying the same 6 sets over and over. You know, first of all, we have Jala. And so he's rocking a red and orange color scheme with like an interesting torso design and a very singular sword. And the function with the Toa is that they have these plastic shooters. You push the thing super hard and it fires a bullet. These things are very easy to lose, by the way. And with individual bullets going on their legs to like, or maybe that was just the Titan sets. Oh no, wait, yeah, no, I remember. You can, like, put some of the extra bullets on the body of the Toa, so that, like, oh, if you lost a bullet, you could just replace it. So, Jala has, like, a tiny pet crab. I assume that's what this is supposed to be, and that's where his plastic shooter is supposed to be. I should really look up what this thing is called, but I'm just gonna call it plastic shooter just to piss people off. Jala's design overall is okay. Crab is just kind of the weak link here, in my opinion, as the crab has these tiny spikes as claws, and I have nearly lost these parts several times because they don't like to stay on, and you can't really do a whole lot with the crab, and trying to fit him on a shelf with all 6 of these guys is kind of a nightmare. Overall, I think he's solid overall. I'm gonna put him in B tier, but okay, you know what, even then, overall he's just solid. There's nothing wrong with him. Next up we have Kongu, and I'm not gonna lie, this is by far my least favorite of all 6 of these Toa Mahri. So, like, he loses his unique sword, and they decided to turn him into an orangutan. He has really short, bulky legs, but really long, skinny arms. And to compensate for his lack of a proper weapon, they gave him 2 plastic things. So he's like a fucking berserker, like with tons of ammo to spend. So I have 2 major problems with this set. First of all, the mask is fucking ugly. I have always fucking hated the way this guy looked. I have never liked this. And second of all, his arms are way too damn long. So the pea shooters that he's carrying on his hands have these ball joints that he can connect, and they just dangle there. And because his arms are so long, his legs so short, they end up dangling, and his arms are so heavy compared to the rest of his body as a result that they just kind of hang there, and it looks really awkward. Yeah, overall this set's just kind of boring, and this is definitely the first F tier of the list so far. It's not the only one, but I have always never liked this set at all. So going in a more positive direction, we have Toa Mahri Holly. So with this set, I actually used to, back when I was like on a journey to like increase my collection again, like I would typically buy collections of these sets all in one for like a decent price, for like 60 bucks. Like overall, so like 10 per set. The collection I bought had 5 out of 6 of them, and this is the one that was like completely absent from that collection, so I had to buy this one later. And in terms of design, I've always liked this one from a visual standpoint. Like she's got these bladed wings that don't really serve much function other than just make her look cool, and this trident sort of thing, I assume that just makes me think she has like Freddy Krueger wrist blades. In terms of overall design, this one looks really cool, and also some of these sets that you will see is that they have these blue visors on top of there, and it gives it more of an aquatic feel. Overall, this set, like when I got it, this one like was really cool for me. I would put it in the bottom of A. I think this is probably her coolest design overall, but this one is just goated. So this one's not as goated, so this one gets A tier. Huki, like in terms of design, I think this one looks really cool. He's got like the crazy spike things on his legs, and a unique spear. So on paper, I really liked the shoulder blades on his right shoulders, but in practice it does make posing him a little weird, and he's also got the chains, so that's pretty nice. So overall, this is a pretty good set. I don't have too much to say about it. Overall, this one also gets another A. I really like this one. And next up, we have Nuparu. So this is another set that I was not the biggest fan of back in the day, but nowadays I think this one kind of holds up. So Nuparu is supposed to be the strong one, as the Earth Toa are typically the strongest in terms of physical strength. So they gave him like the pea shooter, but they also gave him a big ass shield, and the shield overall looks very cool, really compact. He doesn't really have a unique weapon besides that, and the chest armor looks really cool. The mask looks pretty cool, even though they do end up reusing this mask. I really like the bite. I really like the eye protection. Yeah, this one also gets another A tier. This one gets another A tier. Like, it was never really my favorite, but this one holds up pretty well. Last but probably least, we have Matoran. So this is another one that is like an OCD person's least favorite set ever. And when I was younger, this was like one of my least favorite sets of the Toa Mahri. Thinking about it nowadays, this one does still like kind of rub me the wrong way in a couple ways. First of all, the leg armor is just kind of weird, and I never really cared much for it. And also, they gave him the Toa Nuva shoes again, and it just looks and feels out of place on him. They made him a hunchback, and the mask looks better than Kongu's, but not nearly as much. I like the weapon, but my biggest problem with the set overall is this thing right here. Is he has like 2 pipes that connect from his back to his cannon, but to compensate, they made his arm really short, and it has the same problem that Kongu does, is that these pea shooters are surprisingly heavy, and it just makes posing him like insanely awkward. I kind of want to put this one in F tier as well, because I do have some problems with it. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and put this one in F tier. Like, this one above Kongu, I would say, but overall, yeah, I never really liked this one. I just have too many problems with it. And then next up, we had the Barraki, and this was one of the first waves of Bionicles I managed to get my hands on when I was starting my recollection, and you can definitely tell that structurally these are overall very different. First of all, we have Kalama, which is the fire one, and in terms of the design, this one is like the most fundamentally simple, I should say. All the Barraki have these unique guns. They don't have the pea shooters that the Toa do, but they have these squid launchers. You have these like little squishy rubber squids that you pull on their tails, and then let them fly. That in practice turned out to be a very bad thing, because the tails do like to snap off, and it's just really weird, and even if they don't fly off, sometimes they get stuck. It's just really annoying. And also, they had the pincers on their mouths, which is kind of a cool detail. So Kalama's design overall is very simple, since he's based on an octopus or squid. Calamari, as you kind of get that. like overall, I say the 2 tentacles on one hand is just it's just kind of weird, but overall, I think he's a very solid fundamental design. So he's gonna go there, B solid. He's never really been my absolute favorite. And the next we have Takadok. So, like, this was probably one of my favorites overall. I love the color scheme. Like, so all the Barraki are based on like completely different sea creatures, and I think the idea behind Takadok is that he's supposed to be based on a mantis shrimp. And if you've seen what a mantis shrimp looks like, then you're probably getting PTSD if you manage to own one. But like, he doesn't really look like a mantis shrimp, so he's got very skinny. As you can see, he's also got these blue parts on his legs and his back. They all have a very interesting function where they glow in the dark. Like, very few sets out there have this function. I think it was pretty cool, and I love the blades on his hands. I think that's pretty cool. And I will say my least favorite thing that keeps him from S tier overall for me is that if you look at the mask in person, like, he has these 2 front teeth that makes him, they're supposed to be teeth, but if you look at it in person, it looks more like a nose, and it makes him look like a hook-nosed goblin, and you will never, if you see it, you will never unsee it. Overall, I think this is a pretty solid set overall, so I'm going to go ahead and put him in A tier. I think this is a pretty good, one of the better ones for sure. Next up, we have Karapar, and so fundamentally, he's also supposedly he's overall kind of simple. One thing I would also like to point out is that the rock Toa characters and all that are have a dark brown coloration. This is one of the last sets out there for a while to use brown coloring. It's more of a light brown, but it's not dark brown like they did before, but it's like one of the last ones, so he gets some novelty for that. And he's also got those giant fucking pincers. He's based off of a crab, and he's like a very bulky motherfucker, and you would definitely expect that. So overall, pretty cool set. I'm also gonna give this one an A tier. Next up, we have Mantax. He's, you'll never guess, he's based on a manta ray. And so in terms of, like, fundamental design of what they're trying to go for, like, trying to make him look like a manta ray, it kind of works. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of his feet, and he's also got a tiny pincer compared to, like, Karapar, but however the fuck you say that. But it's a little less impressive. He's also got these tentacles on the backs of his arms, and he's also got this really long tail, which I will say, to his detriment, makes posing him kind of annoying, as it's just stiff. Like, I don't know how I'm trying to defend this. Overall, like he's perfectly fine, I would definitely say. So he goes in a B tier. He's just not as impressive as the others, and there's a couple things I'm not that big into. Like the body, for what they were trying to do, like, I think it works just fine. And then next up, we have Alek. Like, if you asked a kid back in the day what their favorite Barraki set was, this is definitely the one. As design-wise, he's got, like, these giant spikes, and he's got a very cool color scheme of, like, dark green and lime green. It's a very nice texture, but also the main reason is because of the claws. Everyone loves the claws. His animal is he's supposed to be based off an electric eel. Okay, I guess. Like, that's kind of, like, he looks nothing like an electric eel, though. Like, what the hell are you trying to tell me there, Lego? So, overall, this one's very good. wouldn't say he's, like, one of my favorites overall, but, like, in terms of design, like, he's definitely an A tier. And then finally, last but not least, we have Piraka. So, first of all, he's supposed to be based on a shark, and I just want to say that does not look like a shark. It looks like he's trying to pucker his lips up for a kiss. But besides that, like, I think the color scheme of this guy is very cool, like pure white, but also just bright red in some spots on his blades and his mouth. Like, supposedly that's blood. This motherfucker has killed people. So I guess I kind of believe you. The way that his body is structured is kind of interesting. Like, you can bend the top half of his torso back and forth. Like, this was a very experimental phase in the designs that they didn't really quite go back with in the later Bionicle series for the most part. So, like, it makes him stand out. Like, my biggest problem with the set would have to be his feet, is that his feet are just very, very long for no apparent reason. Now, if you read the comics, like, there's some parts where you can see that he moves his legs up and down to simulate a shark's tail. So, in that sense, you can kind of tell that he's supposed to be based on a shark. But in terms of putting him on a shelf, like, make him stand up, like, it's just kind of weird. Overall, like, I respect the detail. And another problem I just thought about with his torso is that Lego sets, like, they do deteriorate with age. This one deteriorates. What do you think is going to happen? Like, that's just going to be a wobbly motherfucker. So overall, also, I think I changed my mind. I'm going to put all the Barraki in A tier. So like overall, very solid. They're not as good as the Piraka in my opinion, but overall they're very solid. I would say Piraka is my least favorite of these because of his weird quirks. But overall, this is a pretty solid lineup of sets. They're not as goated as 2006, but as you can tell, but they're pretty good overall. And then next up we have Gadunka. So I mentioned earlier that I went on a bit of a hiatus with Bionicle. By 2007, I had just kind of lost interest. I was more into Yu-Gi-Oh at that point. But we were scouring the Lego section, and I was like, you know what? I think I kind of want this one. So I did own this one back in the day. I don't own it anymore. But what makes this guy kind of interesting is that it's a big old monster boy, first of all. But kind of like Vezon and Fenrakk. But Vezon and Fenrakk, he has like the eye-like spines, but they're just like giant razor-sharp whale teeth. And you can open and close that. And he also has the Piraka claw, which I guess is supposed to simulate his tongue. Now, first of all, he's got like the squid launcher. And second of all, his head glows in the dark. And that's a pretty cool function. And this is like my first experience with like a Titan set post of 2006 and afterwards. And I thought that the joint sockets idea was like pretty well executed, and I also like the fact that you can like move the claws like up and down. I think this is a very fundamentally solid set. Like this one also gets an A tier. And then next up we have Nocturne. Now this is a set design wise. I think this one looks pretty cool. He's got like 2 swords, a squid launcher, and a whip tentacle thing, which I guess is supposed to be a whip. And the color scheme of this guy is really cool, and also he glows in the dark. I really would have liked to own this set though. This is one I kind of wish I had got my hands on, but oh well. And then next up we have Hydraxon. Now this is a set that when I was collecting sets again, this is one I really wanted and remember seeing back in the day. I think it was really cool. Like first of all, like he's got the same color scheme as Hordika, like black and silver, but he's just got like blades everywhere. And what makes him really stand out to me, besides the overall fundamental design, is the wrist blades. He's got those Freddy Krueger wrist blades. That always looked really cool to me, and in person it looks very solid. Another unique thing is that his fingers move individually, just like kind of like Dia Axon's smaller fingers, but you can do that. I think that's very cool. Overall, it's kind of simple, but it also has a lot of really neat quirks. I think this one also goes in S tier. This is one of my favorite Titan designs. And then back onto the topic of sets I did go back into when I was kind of not giving a shit about Bionicle as much as I would have liked, is we have Maxilos and Spinax. So this is a duo set coming with like a spiky dog thing, and this is underwater, so I guess it's a water dog or something. So logically that's just kind of weird. But in terms of the design, it's kind of it has his function where you can open and close the mouth, so that's pretty cool, and the design looks pretty cool. And in terms of Maxilos, on the other hand, his design looks very cool. Like he's very big and girthy, and also a bunch of unique parts that have never been used before or since. He's got Vezon's masks on his shoulders, and I had no idea who that was. I just thought that was kind of cool. And he's got the shoulder-mounted pea shooter, really big ass spear thing that looks very cool. But one thing that really impresses me is that he has extra maneuverability with his body. Like you can move the torso, you can move the shoulders up and down. I think that's very, like, overall this is a very strong fundamental set. And I will say, good luck trying to get this set for a cheap price. This is one of the more expensive sets of this year. And like, I wish I had gotten this one again. I just didn't think I would need it because, oh, I had it before. Nah, I really wish I owned this one again. This is a overall very strong set. This one, I'm gonna say, is another S tier. Very solid design. Not very many sets tried doing what this one did. And next up, we have Lesovic, which I don't know how to say that, but this is a Toa vehicle combination set, which is trying to do what Takutanuva did, but just slightly differently. Overall, I think the design looks very cool, but sadly, this is another set I never managed to get, so I would have liked this one. This one's kind of on the lower end of the priority list. If I had to get any of these, okay, yeah, go ahead and put him here too. Like, of all the sets I could have owned, I think this would be on the lower end. I was aware of it, but I didn't care as much, but nowadays I kind of wish I had gotten it. And then we have some play sets, which are just gonna go with never owned because who gives a shit. And then last but not least, oh wait, oh there you are. Okay, okay, that's well, I was wondering where Window went. So yeah, you're gonna go there. Last but not least, in 2007, we have a limited edition set, Karzadny. So this is a absolute monster of a set that comes with a bunch of other shit. So we get like 2 Matoran, their individual weapons, which are basically just the Matoran from this year, what makes this set kind of the blue one unique is it has Wanua's mask, but just blue, which has never been done before. But then we also have the big boy himself, Karzani, which is like a very unique coloration of like lime green, dark green, and black. And the design for this guy is very interesting. He's got like Karapar armor as like shoulder pads. He has Hordika Matau heads as like upper thigh leg armor. Takadok's blades, Ilek heads as hands, and he's got a big ass whip chain, and he's also got Prydax feet, so he uses the head, and it comes off as a very unique design. And and also the cape. Let's not forget the cape. And on top of that, the big mechanical thing is supposed to be a trap. The function with this thing is that you open and close it to like trap Karzani inside of it because they're trying to capture this dude. And Karzani in the lore, if you don't know, is supposed to be one of the big 3 gods of the Bionicle universe, alongside Metru Nui and another guy whose name I don't know. And he's just mutated into this absolute weird creature, and they're trying to catch him with that. The trap thing is that, like, besides opening and closing, you can maneuver up and down. Overall, just what an absolute insane set that this is. Like, it takes Mantax's feet, which I initially complained about, but I think it works a lot better here. And I will say, this is probably the most expensive Bionicle that I own. I had to pay a pretty penny to get my hands on this one, and it was used. Good luck trying to find this set, let alone try to find it for a decent price. Overall, absolute monster of a set, and I cannot think of any place I would put him rather than S tier. Like, this is a great set overall, and this is kind of my badge of honor. And then 2008 is kind of a big step forward for Bionicle as a whole, as it introduced a lot of smaller torso parts for the Matoran, as the Matoran sets look a lot cleaner this time around. However, that comes with the detriment that the ball socket parts are very, very thin and fragile. Basically, all of these sets going forward, at least until the reboot, all suffer from brittle bone disease. And you cannot take these parts off without them like cracking or breaking off. I have experienced that with the 2008 sets. I absolutely hate it, but I'm not gonna like jet on these sets too much because of that. And so first of all, we have the Matoran. So what's interesting about these guys in particular is that if you buy these things, you can like put them on the backs of the Toa and the Makuta. And what's cool is that this year was like a light versus dark motif. Like half of these guys, so you get like stone, ice, and wind are like, or jungle I guess, are the Matoran, and then the fire, water, and earth guys are the underlings of the Makuta, as this is the first instance to like expand upon the Makuta, as it's not just Makuta, but like the Makuta is like a race of creatures, and you can like fuse them with those individual characters, with the individual Toa and Makuta to give them extra power, I guess. I only owned 1 out of 6 of these. Like, in terms, like, I like the Makuta one designs. I actually own, I don't remember what this guy's name is supposed to be, but I actually did own this one. And the design is kind of solid, but I was not too particularly impressed with it, so he'll go and will only own for the collection. I think I got him as like a package deal with another set. I don't remember which one it was, so don't bother asking me about it. And then we got whatever the hell this thing is supposed to be. It's supposed to be a bug or something. Like, this goes here, and then this monstrosity of a design just goes here. This is like Rotor from Hero Factory, but ugly. So get the fuck in there, you abomination. So out of curiosity, how long have I been doing this for? Oh god, I'm not even close to done. So first of all, I'm gonna cover these guys together as opposed to like going from Toa to Toa and then Makuta to Makuta to stay more consistent, so I don't like go from winter to summer and all that shit. So first of all, we have OG Toa status. We have Kopaka. So these are the OG Toas, except they get like mechanical flight, mechanical wings and all that shit, or jets and all that. With the Toa in particular, they get these metal ball shooters, which are like kind of rare for these Toas in particular, as you flick a sphere and it flies out, like very effective if you're trying to poke someone's eye out. So that's basically all Kopaka has, is he has like a laser, which I suppose is supposed to be like a sniper laser, and then he's got like a blade on the shooter, and he's also got the Buzz Lightyear wings. Though besides that, I'm not gonna lie, there's nothing wrong with this set in particular, but this set was just really boring overall. They don't really do a whole lot interesting with him. He doesn't really do anything. I never really cared much for the design compared to the rest of them. So I'm going to put him at the top of C tier. But it's like, there's nothing wrong with him. He's just so boring. Which is, I cannot say the same for the other two. So we got Lewa, who's got the rocket jets on his arm, on his shoulders. And he's also got a really sick razor sword. That looks really cool in my opinion. And the ball shooter. And he's also got the fancy boots that have been used by Mantax and Karzadni, which I think is kind of like my biggest complaint. But overall, I think this is a pretty good set. So I'm not going to hold that against him too much. So I'm going to put him in B. I think he's pretty solid there. And then next up, we have Pohatu, who is kind of a similar deal to Toa Mahri Kongu in a sense, but in my opinion, this one has done what that set did, but done way better. He's got the shoulder cannon, and they basically took the arms of Kongu and flipped them upside down and put these giant bulky propeller things on his arms, which he doesn't have jets, so these are supposed to be helicopter blades. So I just imagine him like holding these up and then spinning them around. That's just really funny to me. But you can also like fuse them together and put them in a drill, turn them into a drill. So I think that's pretty cool. I will say my biggest problem with that is the propellers, is that if you're trying to put them in as propellers, they're perfectly fine. In terms of like turning them into a drill, they do not like to stay still, and if you try to spin them, they will like turn into like one-side helicopters, and it's kind of annoying like that. But overall, I think this is, if they basically took Kongu's design, but they perfected him, so I'm putting him in A tier. He would be S tier if it wasn't for that weird quirk. And then next up, we have the killer Makuta, which, so like as you can see, it's like a very light versus dark, technology versus nature sort of thing. So with these guys in particular, the first half of the Makuta are bats, and we have Antraz. Sorry if I mispronounce any of these names. So like of these three guys, he's just like Kalama. He's supposed to be like the fundamentally solid one of the three. He's got these big blades, and he's also got these giant bat wings. And what makes these guys stand out in particular compared to the other Makuta is that they have these they have these chest cages with these like balls inside of them that have these tiny squishy spheres inside of them, and these are supposed to be like shadow leeches. They like steal the light from you. But overall, like the chest cage thing is just so cool. I really like that. And in terms of fundamental design, Antraz is very good. Like I have no complaints with him. He's gonna go straight up S tier. Next up, we have Vampra, who is like probably the most experimental of the three. As you can see, his legs are very tiny. So as I said before, these guys are supposed to be bats. And what they were trying to do with Vampra is that he was supposed to be exactly like a bat. And I think of the three with like very big arms with like blades that are supposed to, and hooks that are supposed to like represent a bat's wings. And then the tiny spikes, like, that is just supposed to be, like, bats have very tiny wings, so I guess that makes sense. I've also really liked the color scheme, as he's got, like, unique blue wings that just really pop, and his color scheme is very unique to him. So, like, I should deduct points for the legs being kind of weird, make him out to be a bat. That was the goal. I think they did pretty good, and I think they did a great job, so he gets another S tier from me. And then next we have Kierox, which, in terms of the artwork and posing here, you can definitely see, you'd think, yeah, okay, this one's pretty solid. Like, he's got like these really cool hook blades, really cool mask, two toes, which I think makes him kind of stand out compared to another set we're going to talk about in a minute. And the blades look really cool. So on paper, he looks perfectly fine. Another S tier even. In practice, though, the problem is that they tried to give him a unique look, sort of like a Vampra like 2.0 sort of design. In practice, they made his arms like really fucking long, and so they have to like bend it backwards, and I think it just looks really awkward. Like, comparing a design from like on paper to in person is very different, and so I kind of have to deduct a couple points because of that. Like, I'm not going to deduct too much because I really like the chest thing, and the blades look really cool, so he's B tier, but like the arms really hurt him for me, so he would be goated if it wasn't for that. And then we have, as much as I love Hydraxon, that mask is not going to save you from what the fuck is this shit. And this thing I have seen before actually. This is like, I think it's called Clack or something. But even like looking at this thing, why the hell would you want this thing? This is just a bat done poorly. Even then, goes on what the fuck is this shit? And so we have another Makuta set, Matoran and Rahkshi, which is kind of like the limited edition placeholder for like the combo of the Matoran and Toa / Makuta fusion thing, as it's just two sets in one. Vikon is like the smaller one, and like overall he's fine. Like I like the color scheme of just like black and lime green. Like it's a perfect color scheme. Mutron is, compared to the other Makuta, is very boring. But like what he's trying to do is he has like the 3 claws for hands, like a long spear and another small sword, so he doesn't do too much. But the wings are actually perfectly proportionate compared to Kirok's. So overall, I will give this one an A tier. I'm not super impressed with it, but overall, he gets like a great color scheme, and even then he's just not very original. Okay, I'm gonna be honest, I don't remember this guy's name at all. I think it's Makuta Ikarax. I don't remember, but so you would think this is supposed to be the Makuta again, but this is a completely different character, as that original one is originally named Pterodax, as this guy is Ikarax. So in terms of fundamental design, he's got bright red. He's got like giant wings with like 2 of the Vampra wings fused into one. And in his left hand, I assume this is supposed to be a giant bow. As I don't know, that's what it really strikes me as. It's supposed to be a giant bow with like the eyelet claws. But in his right hand, he's got like the spinny shield thing with Antros blades. Like that shield looks really cool. Like, overall, his design is very simple in terms of the structure, but overall, it's very effective. I love this design. And a unique quirk compared to it is that, compared to Pterodax, is that the face on the back of his head that I explained earlier is, like, slightly different. Overall, this is a very good set. I'm going to put this one in, yeah, right there. This one goes S tier. Like, the design is very cool. And so, here we have another Lazovic scenario where we got a unique Toa. So the Toa Ignika, not to be confused with the Inika. The Ignika is the name of the Mask of Life, and the Mask of Life is essentially the best mask in the universe of Bionicle, and it was given sentience of its own unique design, of its unique form, and it was given a surf blade. Like, this one looks pretty cool, but I don't know why I'm talking too much about this one. I never owned this set, but this is one I kind of wanted, but like I think it would be at the bottom. I never really cared too much for the design overall, but I kind of wish I owned it, especially because as the Brutaka blades, you can't get me to hate those. And then we got the summer sets, where 3 out of 6 of the Toa were put in winter, spring. These were the summer sets that were released later the same year. You can definitely tell the fundamental designs of these are like very different, like, and they all have completely different guns compared to the earlier sets, where they have the metal sphere shooters. These have like air guns where you like push and it like fires off at the speed of light. And so first of all, we have Toa Tahu, who really likes his miniature jet turbine things, and he doesn't have a whole lot of armor protecting him in front of him. But what makes him really stand out is he has the 3-pronged blade shield that spins around. That's pretty cool. Overall, like, I'm not the biggest fan of this one, so, like, I think he's a pretty solid design. He goes in A tier. He's gonna go... Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine for him. And then next up, we have Gali, who's essentially another sniper compared to just like Kopaka, except her design, I think, is a lot better. I think the mask is a little on the ugly side, but she's got, like, the jet wings on her head. And I also think she's got these very unique shoulder pads that very few sets, if any, ever bothered using them. But I also really like the added target reticle on the air gun. I think that's pretty cool. And do I like this one better than Kopaka? Absolutely. This one goes in B tier. And then next up we have Onua, who has probably the most bizarre, angular, Minecraft-looking mask of the three. So he's another one that does not have a unique weapon per se, but they decided to give him a bit of armor on top of his gun, and they gave him a giant-ass shield on his left shoulder, which gives him more of a like sort of a tank sort of feeling, which, I mean, given that he is like one of the strongest, if not the strongest, of the original Toa, that makes a lot of sense. So gives him added protection. This one is a very fundamentally solid design, so I'm gonna put this one in A tier. Man, there's a lot of A tiers. You'd think that Bionicle really made good sets or something. And then we have the Makuta. So I remember there was a kid my age who was really obsessed with this set in particular because he had the McDonald's version of this toy called Krika. So in terms of design, this really reminds me of the Striders from the Dark Crystal, if you remember that. Like, just like demented, sorta. I have no idea what bug he's supposed to be based on, but like in terms of design, I love this guy's design overall. He's got a great color scheme. He's got like these giant frontal blades, like shoulder cannon. Like the color scheme is like overall this is a pretty good, pretty solid design. Like even though the function is kind of boring, like the design is really cool. So overall he gets A tier. And then next up we have Gorast, who's based on a fly. As you can see, she's got the fly wings on her mosquito or fly, and yes, this is a female. Like she has like 6 arms, like great color scheme, and like I assume it's supposed to be a mosquito because of the pointy mouth. Like I think if I had to complain about anything, like the pea shooter like on her lower case arms are kind of in a weird spot, but like in terms of what they were trying to accomplish, I think this is another very good set. This one also gets an A tier. And next up we have Biddle. Also fun fact, I had to like get all these sets in particular like completely separately, and I think this is the last one I got. So with Biddle, like he's got like the bright orange on top of black and silver color scheme. I think it works pretty cool, and what makes him stand out in particular though is the weapons and the shield wings, which are like giant wings, but they're just made out of the giant ship shields. I think that's really cool. And he's got these scimitar looking weapons, or whatever these are supposed to be. Like these are a very rare weapon part that has never been used all that much compared to the rest of them. But like I think there's only like one other set that uses them off the top of my head, and that's Toa Nui from 2009. And I think his torso design is just a little weird, as they used one of the Matoran torsos for his body. But overall, I think this is a pretty solid set. I think it's the weakest of the 3, but overall, I think it's a B tier, like just bordering on A. Yeah, actually, you know what? I think he goes in A tier. I think he's pretty good as well. And then next up, we have Takutanuva. So this is, so as you can see, he's gone through a bit of a makeup change as he's had the light sucked out of him. The Toa of Light is now the Toa of Light and Shadow at the same time, and he's gone through a bit of a gym trip, as it were. So like he's got like the white instead of gold, and now he's like dark gray color scheme. And in terms of like his overall physical design, like they really nailed his design overall, like making his legs really bulky, and the way they designed him is just like very unique, with only one other, which would only get used in one other set. And he's also got Takadok's shoulder heads. I think I got this one before I got the Barraki sets, so that really did not help the case of me thinking that those front teeth did not look like a goblin's nose. Like, and also the spear looks really cool. Overall, what I'm trying to say is this is another very fundamental design. And fun fact, my mother took this set from herself because she liked it so much. She keeps it in on one of her shelves in her bedroom and calls it her guardian. I mean, okay, sure, whatever. But overall, this is an S tier design, even if I'm not allowed to take it. So Ma, if you happen to be watching this, first of all, I'm sorry. Second of all, I hope you really like him. He's probably been knocked off the shelf several times by accident. And then next off, I have no idea what this set is called. I do remember this existing, and I'm gonna put this one in never owned. I never owned this one. I never really cared to, personally, so I guess I puts it in never owned and don't care about. Whereas this one, this is another set I really don't remember the name of, but I did own it. So what it is it's basically just a tiny dude on top of a turret. Can't really move the legs all that much, which is, I guess, is kind of the point, but you can like move the turret up and down, and then you like push a lever on the back of the gun, and it fires off like up to 8 or 9 spheres. So I think the design is very cool, and it's also really interesting that they gave him the car part blades as legs. So this one's gonna get A tier. I think this one's pretty cool. And then next up we have like the trifecta of giant vehicles. This is like, I should have mentioned this earlier, but this is the first wave of Bionicle sets to like introduce like full-on vehicles. It's like, I know the Exo-Toa was there, but like that's like a power armor, but this is like full-on flying vehicles. We have Rocco T3, and so we got Pohatu, who's lost his propeller arms, gotten actual arms this time around. He's got like spikes on his head, but the fundamental vehicle itself is like, has a very nice color scheme of like dark green, lime green. You can't really do a whole lot with the functions though, as there's like a thing on the back of the under the jet turbine on the back of the vehicle where you can like flip it, and it causes the wings to like flip up and down. He's also got like a thing where he can, behind his left leg here, where you can like fire spheres out of it. Design wise, it's overall very simple, and functionally it's very simple. It's supposed to be the baby version of these vehicles over here. So this one goes in A tier. Like, it's not supposed to be spectacular. What it's supposed to do, it does its job. And then next up we have the Jet Rex T6. So fun fact, when I bought this one off of eBay, like for a pretty solid price, thinking I got a pretty good deal. Boy, howdy did I not, because first the thing that happened whenever I opened the box up is that it's just reeked of cigarette smoke. And by the way, do not buy from smoking homes, because this set really did not last long, because that brittle bone disease thing I brought up several times, the set itself, like all the parts just completely fell off after like a week. And so like I was a very sad boy. So, but I technically did own this set, so I'm gonna go ahead and count it. In terms of the fundamental design, this design looks absolutely badass. It has like the light blue on it, and overall it's got like all the cool parts. It's got like Krika legs, jet turbines, you can open it up, and the guy in here is supposed to be Antraz, and you could have fucking fooled me. He looks absolutely nothing like he does otherwise. But like overall, the vehicle is on main display, and the vehicle looks absolutely sick. You can like push the vehicle down and up to like make the blades and the jet turbines fold out. And overall, I love this thing for the design. And interestingly, this set in particular has a limited edition variant which has golden parts, which I mean, admittedly it does look kind of tacky, but overall doesn't really change my placement. This set also gets an S tier. This is definitely a great set overall. Even if I bought it from a chain smoker who couldn't stop even if he wanted to. So next up, we have the Axelara T9, and oh boy, this is an absolute monster of a set. So you can definitely tell, like in terms of function, like it's got a lot of shit going for it. Like it's got two knobs on the sides that like open and close the side cannons and move the blades on the back of the vehicle for some like added functionality. So you can also move the legs and they fold up and down just like an actual plane would. Like that looks so cool. Like in terms of actual design, I think I slightly prefer the Jetrex, but in terms of like the design, the function, and also just the novelty of the set really sets it apart. Like this is one of the most expensive Bionicle sets in terms of regular price. Like I paid full price for this. This was like 80 bucks or something when I bought it at Toys R Us years ago, and this one gets an easy S tier overall. I think overall, fundamentally, it's just way better. It's an amazing set and a great way to kick off 2008. And the next on, we have 2009. So I mentioned, like, I kind of stopped caring about Bionicle because I was obsessed with Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time, and then I just stopped with Yu-Gi-Oh! Back in 2009. And we went to the toy section, and I saw, like, these sets, and it was kind of intrigued in trying my hand on with Bionicles once again. And in the story, this is just completely set on a different planet altogether. Sparta and Gladiator style, so that means I'm gonna like it a lot. Also, the part where I got subjected to the brittle bone disease parts and made me realize, oh shit, these things are very easy to break. So I don't own a lot of these sets anymore because their parts just broke so easily. And we're gonna go ahead and skip ahead and talk about this set. This was the set that I saw first. I don't remember what it's called, but like this is the one that like kind of got me interested in trying it out because my family raised foster children, and they decided to get them a thing. And I was like, okay, you know what? I think I might want one of these. And so this was the one that I got. Or all these sets, for the most part, come with like these gear things. You twist them and it creates a game within a game where you like shoot spike sphere balls at your opponent, at the other Bionicle, and then if it hits a direct hit, you get them to like go down, and then you just keep doing it over and over until they hit 0 health. And this is my first exposure to that, so this set overall is basically just Vezon and Fenrakk, except it's like a tiny scroll dude, and instead of a spider, it's just like a bright red T-Rex. And in terms of fundamental design, this design is pretty solid. I didn't own it for very long because it broke very easily, but I think it's a pretty solid reintroduction to Bionicle, so I'll give it a B tier. And there we're gonna go for the Matoran. I don't know what they're called in Barra Magna. They're the Matoran. Let's just put it that way. Some of these sets, I was never impressed with any of these, so we're gonna have to go another year before we go into the Matoran sets I actually gave a shit about. So I don't really care. Like you can see this set uses Hordika Valkama torch, but yeah, who cares? So we're gonna start with these guys. We got Struck. This was one of the first ones I got my hands on, and like this is the very first set I realize now this is the first time they actually like made it seem as if these sets were, as if the white Toa are basically ice elementals, but you never really got that impression. This is the first instance I remember seeing where they actually seem like ice based, as you got like the the ice shoulder pads. And then he's also got this giant axe, which might as well be the Leviathan axe from God of War. So if you had someone to thank for, this is the design you had to thank for. Overall, I love this design. And am I going to put this guy in like S tier just because he's ice themed? Yes. The answer is yes. I love this guy. So next we have Gresh, who despite looking like a murderous assassin, is actually just a dumb teenager. Like, you can see right here, he's got the spikes, he's got lime green, black, and all that, and like spikes. And you can see he's got this shield thing, but this also doubles as like 2 double-sided blades he can put on both of his hands. Give him like double-sided blades, or you can make the shield. So you can basically do whichever you like. I prefer using the double swords, but I think that's really cool. Overall, I think this is a great design, and I think he's solid fundamentals. So I'm going to put him in an S tier as well. And next up we have, I want to say his name is Tarix. So like, he doesn't have like the traditional chest plate, but like, you could take this guy, put him in like the 2000 sets, and you think he would fit in pretty well. So he's like, so he can fit in like multiple sets, but this is the Gladiator era, and what carries him for me besides the golden color palette is the swords. I love these swords. I think they're very cool. They're very icy, but they're very water based. Like, you can definitely tell. Again, this is another strong candidate for S tier. Like, another one. I really like this guy. Probably my favorite, either him or Strock. I don't know. Like, they're interchangeable. Let's just put it that way. And then next up we have Malum. So he's a very big, bulky bro who with like these giant claws. He's also very short, and with the shoulder cannon. My biggest complaint, I would definitely say, with him is the Hordika shoes on his shoulders, which kind of get in the way just a little bit, and it makes posing him a little awkward because of how wide they are. Overall, I'm not going to put it too much, so this guy also gets an A tier. I think this set's very good. And then we got Voroks. Like, this is one of the rare instances where they actually use dark brown, but it's like fused with light brown. Surprisingly, not orange this time around, so it's a humanoid scorpion. I like the sword, and he also has the scorpion tail with like a giant blade. Like, this thing would really hurt if you got it stung by it. Unfortunately, this guy has a similar problem I have with Kirox. In terms of the artwork, like, you can definitely tell there's not a whole lot of problem with it. However, in person, he has this humanoid mouth underneath the pincers, and it's so distracting. Really don't care too much for that. And also, I just remembered another fundamental thing is he has these parts that stick out from behind his arms and legs, and it's just really weird looking. Overall, I'm not gonna hold it too much, so he would go at the top of B. Like, if it wasn't for the lower half of the mouth, like, being so weird looking, I would definitely put him in, like, A or maybe even S tier. So, like, I like the tail, but it's just the face thing. And next up, we have the Skrull. This is, like, a mob enemy, similar to the Bohrok and all that. It's just a foot soldier in, like, Tuma's army. So, like, he's got, like, the shoulder blades, and he's also got the big-ass sword where he's got the spine fruit thingy shooter. I don't know what the hell I'm saying. I'm delirious right now. But what makes him really stand out is the shield. It's like a razor shield with like a really weird maze-like structure, like pattern on it. On top of making it spin, it also adds to the Spartan inspiration of this last wave of Bionicle. And overall, I think this design is very cool. Very cool, very well done, S tier. Man, for the last set, you think this would be like the last wave to like really challenge 2006 as the best? If it wasn't for the brittle bone disease, then it would be. And then we have the light hero characters or something, whatever. I don't really care too much. And then we have Matoran Nui, who was basically God, and then he's like kicked out by Pterodax and then like sent to Barra Magna, and he gets his human form. So this is another instance where the Ignika mask gets used. And in terms of the fundamental design, this character is like pretty solid. He doesn't really have the sword that he does in the Legend of Matoran Nui movie. If you've ever seen that before, I don't recommend it, by the way, unless you're really curious. But he's got that really sick shield, and the shield looks really cool. I really like this blade design. It's very similar to the Matoro hook blade things, except they're like fused into one. It looks very cool. I would probably put him in S tier. I think he gets like a solid A tier. If he had like a proper weapon or something, he would probably be S tier, but I guess they gotta make room for the foot launcher. And then next up we have Akar, who's like another fundamental design of all of the Toa this wave. Like, he's basically got the same mask as Barracks, who is this guy right here, the same, except actually proper. Whereas this dude's a water dude, this is a fire dude. Makes more sense on this character, with solid shoulder blades, and he's also got a really cool fire sword. Like, you cannot go wrong with that. Like, there's not a whole lot to say about him. He's just very fundamentally solid, so he goes in A tier. Next up, we have Kina. So straight out of the gate, I do have like a couple problems with this design in practice. Like, she's got the these things on her arms and her legs, and she introduces a new design, a new part where you can like put things on the side of their body as opposed to on the back or the front of the leg. And like, in terms of posing, like, those do get in the way a lot. And also, like, the way her torso is made, it just makes her look really unnaturally weird and skinny in person. I do like the trident. Her mask is pretty solid. Like, overall, she's fine. Far from my favorite. I'll give her a B tier. And next up, we have Vastus, who I will definitely say has one of the weirder designs of any of these characters. Torso is like built in a very different way compared to a lot of the other sets. And on his shoulders, he has these weird spike things that have snakes on them. And his main weapon of choice is a scythe, and with his pea shooter at the end of it. So definitely say it's a very weird choice to put it here at the end. But if they had to, I think this is really cool. He gets a lot of novelty because he's like the only Bionicle set off the top of my head that has a scythe. Like, I really wish they had done more scythes. Like, overall, A tier, pretty cool set. Next up, we have Galu, or Gilu. Galu, I have no idea how to pronounce that name. So this is essentially just Strock, but with a more fundamental design. He's another ice warrior. And again, like I mentioned before with Strock, like, they made a conscious effort to make the ice characters look more ice-like. Because they took Metis' shield and just put him on his sides. And also, I really like the sword. Overall, am I going to put this guy on here just because ice? Again, yes, S tier, love this guy. And I want to say his name is Stronix, but I could be very wrong. So this is like a mob enemy similar to the Skrull, just like big bulky bruiser guy with a big club. So I like the color scheme. I think the shoulder blades are pretty cool. He just never really stood out to me as a favorite, but overall, I'll put him in A tier. He's pretty good. And next up, we have Tuma, which is one of the Titan sets of this wave of Bionicle. And in fact, he's like the only one besides the vehicles over here. This is my first exposure to the Brutaka blade, and again, you're never going to get me hate the Brutaka blade. So, like, again, he's got a very solid color scheme of like black and lime green. And what makes him stand out besides that is he has shoulder blades that like move up and down, and it's just very cool. And he has also got like 2 of those life gears on his back, so you can like, he gets double the life points, so he's basically a cheater. But he's also like the first, I want to say he's the first Bionicle and only Bionicle set of this era, or ever, if I remember correctly, to actually have stickers, and made me realize how much I fucking hate stickers on Bionicles. That's not a detriment to the set at all, that's just a me thing. Overall, this is a great set, and I think overall he gets a solid S tier, another S tier. Like, you can really tell that this is a pretty solid wave. There's very few bad ones, if any. So we have this thing here. I do remember this one, actually. This is supposed to be like the bug that accompanies Matoran Nui and is actually his shield, and so that's kind of interesting. But like, this thing looks nothing like it does in the movie, and it's just really weird looking. So never owned, I never really cared to. And then next up, we have the vehicles. This one introduced a whopping 5 vehicles and one last Titan set. And so we got this thing, which is a set I never owned. I would have kind of liked to own this one, but for some reason I was just kind of not interested in this one whatsoever. It's like a snowplow, but in the desert. So this one goes in never owned, but would like to. And this one, I like this one fundamentally, is it's like one of those bikes that has like a side cart on the side of it, if you remember seeing those in like movies or whatever, or maybe on the street if you live in a fancier city than me. You can split them up and all that. That's pretty cool. I never owned this one, so this is gonna go into never owned, but would like to. And so these next 3 I did own, so we gotta go with, I don't remember what this one is called, but this is like further inspiration for the Gladiator set. Oh, I also forgot this one also has the Biddle sword, but like, it's like the chariot. It's like the dude with a whip and the bow, sword, whatever the thing, and it's and the chariot. The chariot design is pretty solid, but then it's pulled by this giant beast thing, which is like a two-headed lion sort of creature. And I will say, I would consider putting this in A tier, but in terms of like in person, like the lion is the biggest problem, is it has two heads. Like if it had like one custom-made head, it probably would have been a lot higher. Like, I just never really liked the two heads, but overall, it's pretty solid, so it goes in solid. And then next up, we have, okay, this thing I actually, Thornax, or I don't remember the name of this thing, but I remember I love this set. This is just another gladiator vehicle set, like the things that they definitely had in the electronic vehicles they had in ancient Greece. So it's got like the mountable, movable, posable pea shooter, but like it also has the added design function of being able to move the armor piece at the very front of the vehicle, pulling it out, and it causes like the side wheels to move out. And I really love the choice of weapons that they decided to use. They used Krika's blades, they have his masks on the sides, and they have Ilex like Freddy Krueger claws. Like overall, this is just such a cool set. I love this one, and I kind of want to let it get it back. So this one gets an S tier. And then speaking of S tiers, we have the Scopio XV9. I remember this one in particular. So fun fact, so Vezon and Cardus, I completely forgot to mention this. Vezon and Cardus is like the biggest set in the entire history in terms of size, in terms of height. In terms of piece count, this is by far the biggest set of Bionicle of all time. So it's essentially a giant scorpion tank. Like you can move the legs, move the legs back and forth, up and down, and to show off it's like a giant mechanical monster sort of thing. Like open and close the mandibles, you can fold the legs to turn into a tank, and it's got those blades. So this vehicle was designed by the character inside of it to like base itself on the creature. And if you've also seen the movie, they actually run into an actual life Scopio, and you can see that the guy is still inside the vehicle. You can also move the tail up and down. He's got like a bunch of weapons on top of it. Overall, this set has like close to 900 pieces, so it's by far the biggest set in Bionicle history in terms of piece count. Overall, I remember this was like on my Christmas wish list that year, and I ended up saving up enough money to get it, and this thing took me hours to build. Like this was an absolute investment. Like this is one of the best sets overall. This is going to go straight into S tier, like no question. One of the best sets in Bionicle history. Finally, the very last wave. God, we're almost done. We have Toa Mahri, Nui, not to be confused with Mahri Nui. This is Toa Mahri Nui. So if you remember the things I said about Shadow Takutanuva, this is basically applies to this. They took the skeleton of that set and just put it on this, except they just added way more. He has way more armor. He has more eye-catching colors. He's golden. He's got like the giant crossbow with the biddle blades on top of that, and he's also got the actual sword. So like, what's not to love about this set? Besides the price tag, there's a lot to love about this set, because holy shit, this set is fucking impossible to get your hands on without like burning a hole in your wallet and taking out a second mortgage at the same time on your house. Because what the actual shit? This set was impossible to find like back in the day, and even nowadays it's still hard to find. I've actually looked for this set before, like not too long ago, and trying to find, like, you can't even find a complete version of this set. Even sets of this without all the pieces is like alone worth $80. That's just ridiculous. Like, either give me the full set or don't bother putting it up on eBay. So this set would very likely be S tier if I got my hands on it, but unfortunately I don't own it. This is like my bucket list. And then finally, last but not least, the beginning of 2010, they were like deciding to end Bionicle off on a strong note with Bionicle Stars. These 6 sets, which are like Tahu, Gresh, Rahkshi, Skrull, Takutanuva, and a random Piraka. And every single one of them comes with like a golden piece, which you're supposed to put onto Tahu to make him like super powerful. And I fucking hate these sets with a burning passion. I remember, like, so you have in 2009 a bunch of really cool sets with intricate designs, and then you end off Bionicle with these shitty, tiny, brittle bone disease motherfuckers that only cost like $5 or something, and then just called it a day and like, yep, this is our magnum opus, the best Lego series of all time, and you decide to end it with this. What the fuck? I have owned all these because frankly that's all you get in this entire wave. were the last ones. Like, if you wanted to get all the sets of 2010, this was it. Like, Tahu is basically just the same as he was before, just brittle bone disease. Gresh is just tinier, but they didn't even bother giving him unique blades to compensate. They just changed his color. Skrull is just a tiny version of Skrull. Is just like a copy paste job of one of the Matoran Skrull dude. Takutanuva is just tiny Takutanuva, but with 2 spears. I would say the ones that had the most effort put into them are Piraka and Rahkshi. Piraka actually looks kind of unique and has a weapon worth a damn, and Rahkshi actually has a unique spine, which is just the head and the spine connected to one part. But overall, like, these would go like C tier, but in terms of what they stood for and the fact that they thought this was a good idea to end the series off of, this just pisses me off. So I don't care, like, all of these guys are going straight to F tier. I'm pretty sure some people are thinking I'm just being a little too harsh, but this is my opinion. Just go make your own damn list if you disagree with me. And so after that, Bionicle was practically dead for like a few years, and then after that they replaced it with Hero Factory, which ended off pretty strong for at least a little while, for like from summer 2010 all the way to summer 2014. And so in winter 2015, they decided to bring Bionicle back with like a completely different fundamental piece system, which, if you're not familiar with it, is if you go from like 2010 to like 2015 and then see these things, it's a complete shock to the system. They took the new Hero Factory piece and then tried to give some of the sets, like merging the old with the new. Whether or not that panned out perfectly is, well, let's just find out. So first of all, I have no idea what these guys are. These are basically the Matoran. I don't know what their names are, but they're like Matoran of Jungle, Rock, Fire, or yeah, you get the idea. So like, I've bitched constantly about the Matoran before because I've never liked their design, that you can't do a whole lot with them. These guys, on the other hand, like, they do have some added function. Like, first of all of them have these like tiny pea shooters, turn a gear, and they like fly off. And yes, I have probably lost a few of these before because they do like to fly off like super far, and like trying to find them is an absolute nightmare. But you can take their guns and give them to the Toa of their waves and like make them much bigger. It adds a bit more bang to your buck. So like, they don't like do a ton, but like their weapons are like very unique for what they do, and it fits with their respective Toa. So as far as Matoran goes, I think they're pretty solid. I really like these. So they're gonna go straight into B tier. I think they're pretty solid. And so we had the Toa, and they do basically the same thing, like adding the old with the new. Like, you can turn the gears on their backs and it causes their arms to move, and with the added function of the Matoran guns fused with them, it gives them a lot more personality. So first of all, we have Lewa, who's got these giant jet blades that turn as an excuse for axe, and also some tiny swords. So, and then he gets like the giant crossbow, and you can put them on as like wings like he's had before. So overall, I really like this set. I think it's pretty good, and one of the better Lewa sets overall, so he gets A tier. Pohatu on paper I think is pretty cool. Like, I really like, he's got these giant boomerang things, you can like fold them up, and on top of that you get like an added thing where you can put them on his feet to give him like cleats or whatever the fuck they're supposed to be. I think the cleat thing doesn't work nearly as well in practice though, but I will say overall it's an A tier design. And then Golly, she's got like the tridents and the fin flipper things here that you can see, and these things do have added function. You can put them on top of the other half of the spear to give her like a double-sided 2 tridents at once, or you can put them on her arms whenever she's equipped with the Gatling gun from the water Matoran. Overall, it's a pretty cool set, so that one also gets an A tier. Tahu is also fundamentally very solid. He's got like the giant swords that he's had before that he can use as a surfboard, and then golden swords that he keeps on his back. So like, he's pretty solid overall. He basically does essentially what he used to do. And you can also see with like a lot of the old sets that they have like their modernized versions of their super old ass masks. Like Tahu's is like the most obvious of all of them. Like Golly's not so much, but like they're pretty good. So overall, I think Tahu gets a strong A tiers. And then next up we have Onua. Onua, he's got like the giant hammer, which looks pretty cool, but then you can also take the blades off and turn them into claws. And you can see like Onua's supposed to be the strong boy of the group, and like in terms of design, he really does speak to that. They made him way bulkier. You can't really do a whole lot of interesting stuff with the gun, but you can like take the shoulder pads on the Matoran and put them on his shoulder pads, make him look even bulkier than he already is. Overall, this is one of the best sets of Nuva I've seen. I think this one is also, but this one's also another A tier. And then Kopaka, like he's also got like the same blade things as Tahu, except they like spin around. You can basically do the same thing with him as he did with Tahu, as he can put them on his feet and give him a surfboard. With the Matoran function, he gets an extra shield, and the gun goes on to his spear and giving more added practicality. Overall, these sets are just pretty good. They're getting A tier. So we have the Matoran, we have the Toa. So what brings us to the villainous force? So one thing I failed to mention with them is with all these sets is they come with like these tiny skull spiders that are supposed to attach onto their faces and possess them or something like that. So those are the villainous force. And then we get the main villain of this wave, which is Lord of the Skull Spiders. First of all, that is the dumbest name for a Bionicle I've ever heard in my entire life. And second of all, like as you can see, the design is just not very good. Like they don't even bother taking out any of the old villains, like fucking the Makuta. They just gave us a spider with like a goofy face. So yeah, that's my problem. One, the design sucked, and two, my other biggest problem with this is that the whole in old with a new fusion sort of thing, like they tried way too hard to make this thing give us the old Technic set sort of function, as the only thing that this set is able to do is that you pull the lever on his butt and then it causes his legs to close in on themselves. So on paper, it's pretty cool. In practice, I don't think it works as well as they like to think that it does. And also, the only thing you can move on his body outside of that function is the feet and the mouth. Like this thing would have gotten F tier specifically for the design, but the function really does not help it. This design sucks. This is probably the worst Bionicle set of all time, even more so than these sets. And yeah, that's saying a lot. With this era of Bionicle in particular, is that they also took extra villains and then they released 5 of them in later on, which I mean, I don't get why. So what they would end up doing is that they took like an extra villain series, and then they would like release them in the summer later that year to coincide with the villains, with the heroes, I mean. So first of all, I don't remember what this guy is called. I think he's called I'm gonna look up these names. Skull Warrior. And in my opinion, this is probably my favorite set overall in his entire wave. So like he's got like the metal skull. So what they did is that they only bothered making like 2 unique skulls for like 5 of these sets, and then distributing like having 2 of them having 1 skull, 2 of them another, and then the 5th one just gets like a skull spider. This guy, I think, with his particular color scheme, gets like the best looking skull of all of them. And also, like all these sets have these limbs, and I think these limbs look really, really cool. And on top of having just a really cool color scheme, he also has like a giant crossbow compared to the Protector of Wind, which, yes, I completely remembered what those guys' names are. And he's also got a sword in case he has to go CQC. So overall, this is definitely my favorite of these guys. Skull Warrior is going to get an A tier. Like I think he's very solid and does pretty good job what he sets out to do. And next up we have Skull Basher, which is just the juggernaut of the 2. Also, I didn't mention it with Nuva or Protector of Earth, but like kudos to Bionicle for committing to bringing back purple, the color purple, which they had never done before in a long-ass time. I don't know why, this guy gives me crazy Cyber Demon vibes from Doom. I don't know why. I assume like I'm the only one thinking that. So his interesting function is that he doesn't have a pea shooter, but instead he has like the axes, and he's got this big button on his back where he can like move it back and forth. And it moves his arms and all that. I think it's pretty cool. So overall, I think the design is solid. So again, he gets solid. And then next on we have Skull Slicer. And I remember this set in particular mostly for the function. So fundamentally, it's a four-armed skeleton dude. He's got like 3 swords and like 3 of his hands, and then he's got like a chain that has a claw at the end of it. And like the claw is kind of like very weird trap sort of thing, supposed to hold the golden mask that he comes with. But his function in particular stuck out to me. So what you do is that you would like turn a gear, and it causes 3 of his arms to move in one direction, and then the 4th arm moves in the opposite direction. And on paper, that's pretty cool. In practice, it like does kind of make to get in the way sometimes, as some of the weapons clash together depending on the positioning. It's not as bad as some of them, but it's not like the absolute best thing. So I think he also gets another solid. And then next up, Skull Scorpio. This is the only one whose name I actually remembered, because this one really stood out to me, but more so in a bad way. So kind of like Lord of the Skull Spiders did. So, but to his credit, like, the design's a little better. He uses the Skull Basher's skull, and he's also got like the pincers. So like those are fine. He also has the scorpion tail function where you pull the thing, where you pull the trigger on his tail and it like clamps the giant slicers. My problems with this design, first of all, are the legs. The legs don't move like at all. That's just kind of the fundamental thing that they were trying to go for. Is it's just like a Technic set, like OG Bionicle, but like in this sense, I don't think it works nearly as well as they like to pretend that it does. And also the tail just looks really weird. I'm not gonna put this one in F tier because I don't absolutely hate this design or the function, but like it does really hold it back. And then next up, we got a bit of a double feature sort of thing. We have Ikimu, who is essentially, I guess, the Matoran Nui of this one, who is basically Hephaestus or Radagon from Elden Ring, where he's like this all-important character. And he's like a Matoran sort of deal, where he's got like he's got the giant Hephaestus hammer, and I will give it credit, like the Hephaestus hammer, it does have the function of acting as a gun, where you can like twist it and it fires the bullets. I think that's pretty cool. And he's got the like spike shield, and I think that's really cool. Of the two sets in this combo set together, I think he's the more interesting of the two, but like the problem with him, I would definitely say, is that he's too small for how bulky he is, and it does kind of get in the way. You can also turn his arm. I forgot to mention that. And that Skull Grinder is literally just a cyber demon from Doom, except a giant staff. It's like, I mean, look at the horns. It really does kind of like strike cyber demon vibes. Besides that, he's literally just Skull Basher, except bigger. He doesn't have nearly as interesting a function. He's got bigger, broader shoulders, I guess, and you can like turn his arms. He can turn the gear to make his arms go up and down. And the weapon looks kind of cool, but I will say the biggest problem with this set is that the blade is really big, and as a result, it's kind of heavy, and it does kind of lop a little bit. Pieces are a lot sturdier, so you don't have to worry about the pieces breaking nearly as bad as the brittle bone disease ones, but like it is something to consider. Overall, it's a fine enough set. I was never really impressed with it, so I'm gonna go ahead and put this one in C tier, and not B tier. These sets were kind of on the weaker side overall, so yeah, you're gonna have to get used to that. And then finally, we have the very last wave. God, I'm so tired. I'm very parched, and I'm ready for this to be over. So we have the very last sets of the very last year of Bionicle's life, sort of a deal with the Matoran and the Toa are basically the same characters, but they go through like completely different reworks. But instead of Matoran, we get like these creatures, which they are labeled as creatures, and then the Toa are just called Uniters, which is kind of silly. It's just like the Matoran, like in the previous set. Like the function with them is that you can take their guns and occasional armor pieces, put them on the Toa, and make them bigger and better. On paper, it seems a lot lamer because all you do with these guys is you just put them on on the backs of the Toa, but in practice, it makes the Toa a lot better. And later on, I'm going to be judging the Toa also based on how they look by themselves and as they do combined with the other sets. And so we got this one, which is like the dragonfly sort of thing, and that goes with Lewa. So the function with this one is that you can move the tail up and down, and it causes the wings to move up and down accordingly. So on paper, that's pretty cool. Seems like something that you would definitely see in the early years of Bionicle. And also those wings are like pretty damn wide, but in conjunction with how it looks on Lewa, it does really do a lot for Lewa, so this one goes in B. And then we got the scorpion thing. This one really stood out to me because mostly for its weird function. Like the design is okay, I suppose, like it's a scorpion thing. It's weirdly disproportionate. Like the head is like very low to the ground along with the leg, but the arms on its body are like way above its head, and the function is that you turn the tail left and right to make the arms move up and down. Like that's kind of cool, but it's just so awkward. It's not terrible, but it goes in like C tier. I don't think any of these remaining sets are like terrible or anything. They're not the absolute best. And we got the Firebird. This one goes up in A tier because it's essentially the bug thing, but the design looks a lot cooler, and it also does just as much, if not more, for Tahu than it does for Lewa, as we'll get into. And we got the fish thing. I don't know what this is supposed to be, but this one comes with the pea shooters that are attached to the propellers, and if you turn the propellers, they cause the pea shooter to fire out. So that's the coolest thing about it. The design is kind of weird, I will admit, and you can also like move the guns downwards to make it look even weirder, but it goes on function with Golly. So with that, I can't put this one in F tier. It also comes with a stand that you can put onto because it can't stand up properly on its own, so they really had the hindsight to do that. It's a couple of the sets that they did before that they didn't even think hindsight to do that with. I'm glad that they did that. So it goes in C tier, does a lot for Golly, otherwise it would go in F tier. And then next up we got the mole thing, which has this unique gimmick of where the arms flip up and down as if it's like digging. That's kind of cool. Also, I really like the color scheme. I don't think it really does quite as much for Onua as it does for like the others, but I think this one goes in like B tier. It's fine. And as for the creature of ice or whatever, it goes packed in with Kopaka as like a duo thing, and we'll get to that later. And so we got Lewa, who's got like the twin helicopter blades that you can like spin. I think the blades are a bit of a slight downgrade, but in terms of like function, like all the Toa had this thing where you can like move their upper torso like left and right with the gear on their butt. Yeah, are you still with me? Okay. And as mentioned before, you can fuse them with their respective creatures to make them look like a lot cooler. And in terms of Lewa, like I will say his biggest problem would have to go to his legs. Like the legs are a little on the weirder side, but it makes up for it when combined with the bug creature. It makes him look a lot cooler, and it really saves the design a lot. So I guess for consistency, I have to put him in A tier because I do. Actually, you know what? The legs aren't that bad at thinking about it, so he goes in S tier. And then we got Pohatu. I don't particularly like the weapon nearly as much as I like the boomerangs. He's got like the staff that has a pointy spear at the end of it, but he also has the ball and chain on the other half. Very reminiscent to his very first design. Overall, combined with the scorpion thing, he doesn't do as much as you think he would for Pohatu as the others do for their respective characters. But overall, I think he's pretty good. So he gets an A tier, basically about the same. And then we get Tahu, who's definitely loses the surfboard, unfortunately, but on top of that, he has these swords that like move back and forth and make them longer or shorter, however you want to. So overall, I think he's got a pretty solid design. By himself, he is probably my favorite design for Tahu ever. And then when combined with the Firebird, he just looks like an absolute god. Tahu with his respective bird is by far the best fusion of these 6 Toa. So overall, this is by far an easy S tier. Even without the bird, he's an S tier. With the bird, he's easy. And then so Golly, honestly, in my opinion, like the loss of the giant trident was a bit of a downgrade, but in practice, I think it actually works out just fine. She has like a spinny thing on her sword so that she's not a complete copy of Kopaka. I mean Pohatu. But overall, her design is pretty cool, and like with her fish creature, like she goes straight to A tier. And then next up we have Onua, who goes through a bit of a change. He loses the hammer, but instead he gets a giant drill with the pea shooter on it. You can spin the drill and turns into a pea shooter, and the drill spins and it shoots the bullets. Overall, in terms of just pure design, I think Onua got the overall biggest upgrade. Great color combination of black, orange, and purple. Like, you can definitely see the amount of love of purple with this set. Overall, this is another set that gets an easy S tier without the mole. The mole doesn't do as much for him, but his design was already so perfect that he gets an easy S tier. This is without question my favorite design for Onua. And then next up we have Kopaka and Melum. I actually just had to look it up. So he gets like a unique double-bladed sword. So I think the sword looks pretty cool, though I do kind of miss the shield that he gets. He doesn't get the shield. And then he also gets his own unique gun. And on top of that, he comes with his own creature as well. And the creature is basically just the mole, except just pure white this time around. So like as a double feature, like, so this one also gets an S tier. Design wise, I think I prefer, like, overall I prefer this design. Overall, I just wish he had the shield because he's so iconic, because he's most associated with the shield of all of them. But I mean, as it's a pretty good set overall. And then finally we end off with this first half of the wave with Umarak the Hunter, which is the main villain of this part. They don't have any more skull spider bullshit. But this time around, so first of all, this dude looks like straight out of a fucking horror movie. as he's basically, he looks a lot like Krampus. I don't know. He kind of gives me some Krampus vibes, or maybe I'm just fucking crazy for thinking of that. Like, design-wise alone, this guy is absolutely sick. He's got the same gun sort of thing that the Skull Hunter has, except he's just way edgier. Like, I love the color palette, black, red, lime green. And you'd think I would complain about the horns because they're so damn huge, but honestly, I don't really mind them that much, and it just adds the badassery. He's an edgelord. I love edgelords. Easy S tier. This one's one of the goats of the year by far. And then, of course, we have like seven sets left. Damn, I'm almost getting a little sad, but at the same time, I am dying of thirst right now. And I've been at this shit for about 3 hours. What the fuck? Next up, we have mask maker Ikimu, who went through a bit of a growth spurt. So he's definitely bigger, and he's also wearing the Mask of Creation, which is like the main mask, I guess, of this wave. Basically just the fundamental Toa design from this wave overall, but he's also got the same spinny shield, except it's blue this time around. I will say though, like, they completely got rid of the pea shooter. I guess his most interesting aspect is that the shield moves back and forth a little bit. So moving on, so I'm gonna go ahead and put him in like B tier. He's fine. I realized I just completely stopped like ordering him. I don't like, it doesn't really matter that much. All right. And so we got these beast creatures. I had to look up. We have Lava Beast, Storm Beast, Quake Beast. And so these are the replacements for the Skull Spiders and the Skull Hunter stuff, all that. And overall, I think design-wise, they're kind of a mixed bag. So we got Fire Beast, who's got these really scrawny legs, but then they decided to make him really top-heavy with his arms. He's got like the tiny claws that you can like move up and down a little bit. But his main gimmick, besides being able to move his torso, is that you can spin a gear to like make one of the blades and move up and down. Honestly, on paper, I like the idea, but in practice, like, it just looks really weird. Also, I just don't like how tiny his legs are compared to the rest of these guys. Guys, it always really stood out to me in a bad way. So we're gonna go ahead and put him in C tier. I'm almost tempted to put him F tier, but I'm not like that harsh, I suppose. And so we have Storm Beast, which I figured this guy would be Ice Beast, but okay. So compared to Fire Beast, like, I like the color palette of this guy a lot better, and I think the smaller legs is just a little better looking on this guy, and like, he doesn't look absolutely ridiculous like Fire Beast does. I like the giant 3-finger claws, and like, overall the color palette's just a lot better. I don't really get the trap tail that he has going on here. Like, I forgot to mention, like, the beasts come with these traps, these sort of trap things made by Umarak, and this is part of his tail. But what you can do is you move the tail and it moves, and his arms just flail around, and it's just kind of goofy overall. So I will say this one's an improvement, but not by much. This one's like probably my favorite of the three. And next up we have Quake Beast, who I will give it props. I do like the abundance of purple on this set, but again, if you're obsessive compulsive, you're probably gonna hate this set with a burning passion. And so on his right shoulder, right arm, he's got the big punchy thing, and he's also got the those two shoulder blades on one shoulder, and he's got a trap on his left shoulder and a very tiny arm on his left arm. Of the functions, I think he has the best one, where he could turn the gear and it moves his arm back and forth. There's a set from Hero Factory called Bruiser that if you ever collected Hero Factory sets, you would know who I'm talking about. This is basically that, but done better. So I think B tier fits this one just fine. Like, overall, I'm not super impressed with all these designs. And then that leaves us, finally, last but not least, we have Umarak, the Destroyer. So this is the same character, but except he's just like mutated into an absolute demon, heavily bulked up. Like, his legs are fundamentally the same as they were before, but like everything else above is just like way bigger and way bulkier and just more beastly. He's got like the same head as like the other beasts. Like, his biggest interesting function, I would have to say, is his hands. He's got gears that you can turn, make the hands open and close. I think it's pretty cool. So, like, he is by far the best of the final wave of 2015. Is that enough to make me put him in S tier? I don't think so. Like, I wasn't, like, that big into the design, but overall, he's fine. And then we got, like, 3 more things, and we got this bird thing, which is just a tiny bird. It's the fire creature, which is just the same but worse, so fuck that. And then this thing I've literally never seen before, and then this goes into what the fuck is this shit. And this one, I have no idea what the hell this is supposed to be. I guess this is just a placeholder picture for the whole series. So overall, for posterity's sake, this goes in S tier. So like Bionicle is just that goated. As you can see, Bionicle has just been very consistent overall in its entire lifetime. There's never been anything like Bionicle before or since. I guess the closest thing is Hero Factory, but even Hero Factory didn't even get close to this. Anyway, that's the tier list. Thank you guys so much for watching. This was really fun to do, even though it took me like 3 hours just to do all this. Hey everybody, Editing Yojimbo here. So I'm going to go ahead and interject real quick that I was originally going to edit this tier list a little bit before finalizing it, which I completely forgot to do, so I'm going to go ahead and do it now, and I'm also going to make a lot of corrections that I've had my opinions change as I was in the middle editing the video, and we're going to go ahead and go through that. So starting off at the bottom, like all of these, I would probably like to have Ultras, but like these guys are going to stay exactly the same. Who cares about these guys? And then working our way from the goats, like I am going to go ahead and say that all of these guys are staying exactly right where they are. Okay, you know what? Actually, on second thought, I'm going to go ahead and move Leiwa down to A tier because I realize that yes, his leg design is a little on the weaker side. And in terms of stability, it is a little on the jankier side. And Scrawl is going to go down to A tier as well. Mainly because my opinion just like shifted slightly. My opinion on these guys kind of changes here and there. So next up, Umbra, A tier. Umbra is going to, I realized I was just like way too generous with this guy because the design is very cool on paper, but yeah, he has a lot of problems with him. He's very gimmicky, and also his color scheme is just super weird, so I'm not going to be too harsh to him. He's going to go down to B tier. Same. Huki, actually, on second thought, is also going to go down to B tier. I'm a little nicer to this one than a lot of people are, since a lot of people seem to hate this set. But yeah, the shoulder blades on his right arm are a bit of an issue. Golly is going to go down to B tier. I realized I was a little too generous with Tahu and Onua Mystica because they're going to go down to B. The rest of these guys look just fine. I realized I was giving a lot of praise towards the Uniters and not giving the original Toa like their dues, saying like, oh, the Uniters get like bonus points because they're better just because the Combiners, and yeah, these guys, I wasn't giving these guys enough credit, so a couple of them. This Leiwa, on the other hand, is going to go up to S tier. This Tahu joins him, and Kopaka also goes up in S tier. The rest of them can, yeah, stay here. That seems just fine. And B tier, the one thing that really sticks out to me is Piraka is going to go to the bottom of B tier. He's staying in B tier. Like, this guy is cool. Y'all are just mean. Whereas the beasts are going to go down to C tier. The rest of these look perfectly fine. Oh, wait. Golly? Mystica Golly? Like, I realized I put Kopaka in B, saying he was just boring, and yet Golly is like, her mask is like almost offensive. She's gonna go down to C, and then Kopaka, okay, you know what, he's gonna stay in C, as I'm not the biggest fan of him, but he's going below Golly because this set is like one that a lot of people really don't like, and in hindsight, I think I was a little too nice to this one. And then for C, this is the one where we're gonna get the most changes. Taku and Puku, I was maybe a little too harsh on this one, and let's see, the OG Toas, they're I was a little harsh on those guys, so they're gonna go up as well, like to B. They're all very solid. I've learned to appreciate them. These guys are perfectly fine. Who I was not harsh enough on the other hand, would be the Rahaga. These guys suck. I have no idea what I was thinking saying that the Rahaga were 100% not deserving of F tier. These are some of the worst Bionicle sets they've ever created. They're just lazy. They all go straight to F tier. Rock Scorpion dude is also going to go down into F tier. The design is just really utterly ridiculous. He'll go to the top though. Fish thing, yeah, even the stand is not enough to save it. Just go down to F tier. Lava Beast, like, and I really hate this design, and it's just so gimmicky, and the legs are so stumpy and it looks so awkward. He is going to go below the Rahaga, but above, and no, that's being too nice. And then Skull Scorpio, man, like, in hindsight, I said the design was cool. Who am I kidding? This design sucks. Like, I'm gonna go ahead and put this at the bottom of F tier. It's still better than the Lord of the Skull Spiders. Lord of the Skull Spiders is just straight up trash. And yeah, I still stand by it. This is hands down the worst Bionicle set of all time. And now I'm gonna go ahead and rearrange all these so that it makes more cohesive sense, at least in my brain. And so here is the final tier list for the video as I have ordered it. It really didn't change too terribly much compared to how I organized it originally. So I'm not gonna. So yeah, this took a lot longer than it should have in order to make it. But in all honesty, I had a ton of fun with it. Regardless, let me know if you guys want me to do another one similar to this in the comments below. If you want me to do like a Hero Factory one, I'm 100% down to do that. And thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Take care.